Hi guys. Welcome back. Hi.
What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up?
Pow!
What's up?
Oh,
What's up? What's up?
always.
What's up?
Always. What? Hey man, dropped a penny. Well, thank you. Thank you for the bit. Thank you for the bit that you gave to me. Oh man. Oh, you got some green in your sweater.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
I love it. No, it's great. It's fantastic.
This is gonna be it for the whole episode.
Hi guys. Welcome to Filmography. Thank you for sticking around. Where we are today, considering the Michael Cimino, some would say masterpiece. Some would say
Put my jacket on.
absolutely.
It's gonna annoy me.
Some would say one of the worst movies ever made. Heaven's Gate, his follow-up to last week's film, The Deer Hunter.
Which, now that I have seen this movie, like, it is crazy to me how ripped apart. Like, how, I mean, they killed
I know.
this movie.
Yeah. So first things first, before we jump in, I'll be honest, I won't blame you this time, because it's 3 hours and 36 minutes. Did anyone watch it? Did anyone watch Heaven's Gate? Has anyone seen it before? Do you know what we're talking about? Also, while we do that, I'm going to add, we're going to put out a little, give me a one. Give me a one if you have watched Heaven's Gate before or recently. My goodness. Two. Hard twos, hard zeros. Convinced me to watch it? Well, that's fair. That's what we're going to try to do, honestly. So here's old walking. And we're gonna not old walking, old young walking. And we're gonna replace him.
I was watching it, and Kelsey came in and looked at the screen, and Christopher Walken was on camera, and she was like, "Who's that woman with a mustache?" Like she really didn't know, and then I was like, "That's Christopher Walken." She was like, "Oh my god!"
She's like, "No way!" Yeah,
I couldn't believe it.
I think it's. I think it makes perfect sense to like not, because again he's just icy stone cold blue in this movie, but he's also he looks like he's a
beautiful
skeletal insect.
Yeah, he looks like a praying man.
Angel of death bug. He looks like he should be menacing ants in A Bug's Life. Or ants. I don't remember which one it is. You watched it today as you were cooking? Good gravy. Were you cooking a roast? How long? Because if you were doing anything besides like a turkey, you overcooked it if you watched the whole thing. No, that's freaking awesome, man.
I really did, and I even told you that I thought it was a 4-hour movie.
Yeah.
Like, I really did.
And apparently there are
his first version was like 5.5 hours.
Yeah.
So this was a swift 3.5-hour movie.
Yeah, breezy. But honestly, it did blow by for me a little bit.
Me too.
I mean, it didn't blow by because I kept kind of going like, okay. But like every once in a while, I'd be like, getting close to the stream, got to finish. Meal prep on Sundays. You were in the kitchen for a while. Rock and roll, dude. That's awesome. So since not everyone watched it, here we go. I'm gonna give a quick.
Yeah, this is gonna be. I was gonna ask you before we started. How do you want to? We can't go.
Let's go blow by blow.
We can't. It's 3.5 hours. We can't unpack like the entire synopsis, but
no.
I mean the entire storyline.
But we can kind of hold on. So, actually, well, boy, Wikipedia does a reasonably good job, but they kind of do go blow by blow. Hold on.
Let me while you look at IMDb, I'll look at Wikipedia
Yeah.
to see if their synopsis is pretty quick.
If you don't know what we're talking about at all, you could watch a trailer.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
Yeah. Oh, it is?
I mean, it's like multiple paragraphs.
So it's a dramatization of the real-life Johnson County War in 1890 Wyoming, in which a sheriff born into wealth attempts to protect immigrant farmers from rich cattle interests. I mean,
honestly, that
pretty concise.
really does sum it up pretty well. And then you stretch that line over 3 hours. And
does it feel like a 3-hour movie? It does not feel like a 3-hour movie to me. It
really didn't.
No,
because when I paused at one point and to like go get something to drink, and I was like, oh man, I only have an hour left.
Yeah.
And I just it moved.
I'll be honest, because I kind of had my eye on the clock. I'd seen it before, but I definitely wanted to rewatch it because it's been a long time. I was kind of like, I had my eye on the clock because I was like gonna be close to stream time pretty soon, and so I would stop and I'd like write a note or something to myself, and I'd look and see how much time I had left, and I'd be like, 45 minutes left? It doesn't seem like there are 45 minutes left in this story, and so in that sense and then I would be like, there 20 minutes left, and I was surprised at how much time was left when I looked at the bar because I was streaming it. But then when I would jump back into the movie, it did not. It just none of it felt like unnecessary. None of it felt. It didn't feel long. It's just it. I was riveted. I loved it, and it kind of drew me in the whole way. It did everything that I feel like was supposed to happen to me during the Deer Hunter, but it earned it. To me, I was like, I want this to be this long. I want to take this time. I want you to linger on these shots because the shots are gorgeous, and I care about the characters deeply. I cared about every single character in this movie.
That's interesting.
Like every person on screen, I was like, yep. And then the other one, I was like, these are good performances. I am not really engaged.
That's so interesting.
To me too, and I don't really know.
I mean, it's not that I didn't connect with the characters in this one,
but you just also connected with Deer Hunter.
Yeah,
and
and to an extent, I was surprised at a 3.5-hour movie, and I think everyone is fantastic in this movie.
Yeah.
I think it's also criminal that apparently this movie, because it didn't do well and how reviled it was, like Chris Christopherson kind of got kicked off the A-list and he never really recovered.
Which is insane because he's amazing.
He's amazing in this.
I mean,
it was I had always known he was a good actor, but he was also like the musician guy, and he was just happened to be also a really good actor.
Yeah, like.
But to me, he was a revelation in this. I was just like, he's fantastic. Yeah. He's the best part of the movie for me. And he's going toe-to-toe with Christopher Walken, who's also great. And Isabella Huppert was... I didn't know who she was, but like 45 minutes in, I was already like, who is she? She's amazing.
She's from Huckabees.
Yeah.
She's in a... she's like the Catherine Deneuve, who's not Catherine Deneuve. She's great. She's amazing. Yeah, she's amazing. But you're right. I mean, so let's get into it a little bit. So Michael Cimino coming off in 1978, winning 5 Oscars for The Deer Hunter, which we watched last week, right? The Russian roulette movie. I mean, it just goes. It was a critical success. Goes mad.
It made a lot of money.
Yeah.
It was a win for everybody involved.
Absolutely. De Niro, one of his great performances. Walken, who was up and coming, but like this is like, whoa, who's this dude?
Yeah.
Really, for a lot of people, I mean, because Al was already established. Meryl Streep kind of introduced her, more or less. Thank you for the bits. Thank you for the bits that you gave to me. El Jefe style is like 90s teen angst. I feel like
you know what I was going for? I
feel like it's young Spielberg.
I was going for Jimmy Fallon in that Boston Fever Pitch. I was going for Jimmy Fallon in Fever Pitch.
I always am too, but just subtly. I'm just in here. I'm Jimmy Fallon.
I'm always in here. I'm Jimmy Fallon in Fever Pitch.
Yeah. Talked to a Vietnam vet friend at work. He said that Russian roulette would not be out of the blue in Vietnam. Interesting.
Huh, cool. Yeah, I didn't have an issue with that at all.
Yeah, I don't either. And again,
a lot of people did, not me.
Yeah, and we talked about that.
Yeah.
How it really kind of Vietnam is almost like a vehicle to like explore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
not a war movie to me, honestly.
Yeah.
Now that I've seen it and like really absorbed it, I was like, oh, that's just it's an anti-war movie, obviously, but it's a very personal story about the effects of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. And it was a tremendous smash hit. It was amazing. It put Cimino on the map, and he had been trying to get this movie, Heaven's Gate, made for years.
Yeah.
And no one picked up on it.
Before his first director effort with Clint Eastwood, the Lightfoot.
Thunderbolt and
Lightfoot. Yeah.
Did he direct it or did he write that?
He wrote, and then he owes everything, and he admitted as much. He's like, I owe everything to Clint Eastwood because he read the script. Because he wrote Magnum Force too.
Right.
And he was like, he gave me my first shot at directing, and he championed me because they didn't want to let me direct it. And he said, well, I'm not going to do it, but this is the movie I'm doing next, and he's going to direct it. And apparently that's, Heaven's Gate was, they were like, okay, so he did a lot of like takes and stuff, and his behavior was kind of he kind of acted like a dictator on set on Deer Hunter. But they're like, but maybe that was a one-off because on his Clint Eastwood movie, Clint Eastwood was such a star that he was like, after 4 takes, they're like, no, we're done.
Yeah.
We're moving on. And Eastwood would he'd be like, no, we're done. We're moving on. And he didn't want to go toe-to-toe with Eastwood because he was giving him his big break. So, and Eastwood is like known for maybe doing 2-3 takes per setup and then moving on.
He has to have an empty chair next to him every time.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, good. I love Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, he's great.
Even when he does stuff like that.
I actually don't even really. I just know that's. I haven't really watched it.
Yeah.
I haven't like dived in to figure out what that is.
It was a bunch of silliness, but I was just like,
is he just like talking to a chick? Is he making a point? People were just like, he's a crazy daughter-going man. I'm like, I bet it makes sense. I bet it's
just because it was in a political environment. It was like at the RNC convention. It's just like, it's gonna become a thing. And I was like, but guys, it's all silly nonsense.
Anyway, so yes, Heaven's Gate is 1980. That's true. So he'd been trying to get Heaven's Gate made, right? Mm-hmm. People were like, nah. And then he does the Deer Hunter. Deer Hunter wins 5 Oscars, blows everybody away, no pun intended. And then he goes, cool. Well, I've got this script I've been trying to make. I think it's going to be my masterpiece.
Yeah.
It's about the Johnson County War, which is a true historical event.
And crazy, like...
and the
it's
characters
crazy
are
topical today.
Absolutely. Oh,
like,
yeah. Watching
today.
it, you're like... So just to kind of, so he sets it up at United Artists, and they're like, cool, we're going to run with it. We're going to give you, freedom, because we know that's what you need, and we're in the spirit of the new Hollywood, guys. Mm-hmm. This is going to bring us. This is one of the death blows. This is maybe the death blow, coupled with some other things, but it's very often cited as the death blow to the new Hollywood movement.
This and Coppola's
One from the Heart.
One from the Heart are the two, but this one gets shoulders more of the blame. Yeah.
Right. And stuff like the last movie, like it was kind of like the honeymoon started to be over. Honestly, a little bit. Because when was Apocalypse Now?
79.
And that one still came out and like.
But I think it was a combo of Star Wars coming out in 77.
Exactly. And that's
Jaws.
That's the other part.
And it was people seeing the light in terms of what that model was.
Absolutely.
And then egos from these directors from the new Hollywood earlier in the 70s going completely out of control.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the producers of Heaven's Gate, they really felt like their hands were tied as the budget kept ballooning like to 4 times its original budget. And they were like, they went through every option of how they could solve this. They're like, do we fire him? We can't fire him.
Yeah.
He just won 5 Oscars.
Yeah.
Are we going to be the company that fires him?
Yeah.
And he knows this.
Yeah.
And so he just felt like he was completely immune to it. And so they kept going through all these options like, well, maybe we could pawn it off to another studio. No studio wanted it.
Yeah.
And then eventually they were just like, well, I guess all we're going to have to hope for is this is a true Apocalypse Now situation where we walk away with a brilliant movie.
Exactly.
And then they would visit the set and he would show them dailies. And like, it's a gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
There are shots in this movie that literally I was like,
yeah,
like literally gasp worthy.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
so they saw the shots and they're like, oh,
it is a masterpiece.
Okay, we're gonna keep. I guess we're just gonna lean into this and keep putting the money in, even though they kept trying to reel him in. But they were like, well, he's got to see it through, and we just got to bank that this is going to win a bunch of Oscars and stuff. And they saw this footage, and it was gorgeous.
And it still is. It is beautiful. I mean, like it.
Because the fact that when you see that first town, and you're like,
amazing.
There's no CGI. Like that's what's incredible.
Yeah.
There's no CGI.
Yeah. Go back and watch this movie and realize that there is, and it doesn't. You don't even have to realize it because it doesn't look like it. It looks real, and everything is amazing. From the first shot, this little crane down. Well, hold on, we'll get to it in a second.
Yeah.
No, what's up? So Clint Eastwood's probably my favorite actor ever. Is a different definition of masculinity. Probably why I feel inadequate. Yeah, wouldn't we all? Clint Eastwood, like honestly, but like throw Chris Christopherson up against Clint Eastwood in this movie, and I'm like,
oh yeah, he's fantastic.
I'm not missing anybody. I want Chris Christopherson. Yeah, same. I was like, Chris Christopherson is awesome. I know he's cool. And then I watched this, and I'd seen it and I forgot, and I was like, dang.
I mean, he's great.
He's just incredible.
He's not just like, I was like, yeah, he's a great actor, because I knew that. I knew he was a great actor.
Yes.
But like he does some stuff in here that particularly the ending, which I can't wait to talk about on the boat. Like he just has brilliant moments throughout the entire thing.
He's great.
He really I mean, it's a massive movie. It's about as big as a movie can get.
Yeah.
And he carries it.
Absolutely.
Well.
So basically, we were talking about how it's topical. So basically, that synopsis is true. But essentially, real quick, it's the 1890s. We're in Wyoming. There are these wealthy landed gentry, like these landowners,
cattle barons,
right? Basically, who are like, well, there's this area, Johnson County. We want to run it. So we're gonna.
They're just buying up all the land all over Wyoming.
And there's this immigrant population in Johnson County, and they're like, well, they're all a bunch of criminals and hoodlums and thieves anyway, and layabouts, and they're all just crazy. And we're just going to murder them. We're gonna find, we're gonna say they're all criminals, and maybe some of them were. Some had to steal.
Most of it was out of desperation.
Yeah, it's kind of the Jean Valjean thing.
They were stealing cattle from the cattle barons and just to kill them so they could eat.
Yeah,
and so they used just that desperation as an excuse to create a death list with 125 names on it, which would made up almost all of Johnson County.
Wipe out every immigrant, and then they could just saunter in and just set up shop and run everything.
And they were in their right to do it because there had been cattle that was stolen, and they used it as a catalyst to essentially do mass murder with the president's approval.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we'll get to him later, but Sam Waterston, who like in my lifetime, again, I guess I just forgot everything about this movie because in my lifetime, Sam Waterston is the go-to like nice dude.
I know,
and I'm like, I want him to be shot in the face so badly.
He's great in it, but he is so evil.
He's amazing, but I'm just like, shoot him now, shoot him, kill him. I want him dead.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Must run much more Dragon Prince on Netflix. Oh, thanks. Well, the Chris and the John Hurts. Yeah. John Hurts so good. Sam Waterston, absolutely. And if you have not seen Heaven's Gate, you haven't seen Sam Waterston in Heaven's Gate, and you haven't seen Sam Waterston.
Yeah.
My gosh, I didn't know he had this in him.
He's wearing a fur, what do you call those little Russian hats? Minka or whatever. What is it called? Babushka?
I was going to say babushka, but babushka is like I don't even know. Yeah, it's great.
Being
he
a
takes
dick
it off.
wearing
There's
a
another
babushka.
one. There's a smaller one. Fantastic. No, Sam Waterston. No, fantastic. So he's sort of the leader there. He's the sort of head. He at one point he goes, "To you I represent the full force and authority of the U.S. government, including the president." And you're just like, good.
Oh man, he's so smarmy.
He's so smart.
He's so smarmy.
So Marioshka. Oh,
Marioshka.
I'll buy that. Yeah. Anyway, so this is happening. What are the association? I can't remember what it's called.
The Farmers Association.
The stock
farmers.
Yeah. It says something association. Stockholders association? No, stock. Yeah, and it's farmers and it's whatever.
Stock Growers Association.
Stock Growers Association. So it's this association, and they become kind of like literally the man, right? And they're all incredibly wealthy, and they're like, we're gonna go in, we're gonna wipe out this cattle town of immigrant criminals. Because they're in our way and they're not human.
But they're using it as a guise to just get the land.
Basically.
They're using it, they're
Absolutely.
like, yeah, but also we're going to do this and then we're going to take your land.
It's what we did to Native Americans, but they're also just kind of going like, well, we can do it again and we can do it legally because they're criminals, right? And yeah, absolutely. I mean, the movie.
So it sets up this whole like essentially white elite America, 1% America against all these immigrants.
Yeah.
and that's the battle throughout the whole movie, and
basically
it feel like some of the dialogue that's in there.
Yeah,
and
you're
stuff,
just like, goodness gracious.
What does he say about being poor in
Yeah,
America?
he goes.
What was it?
He goes. They've made it. Like the worst crime, or just they've made it illegal to be poor in America.
Yeah, the worst crime in America is
to be poor. And he goes, it always has.
It always was. Yeah,
it always
right.
was, exactly.
Yeah,
and it's people are on their way. Let's kill them. I mean, the movie after the prologue literally opens with an immigrant caravan.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just you see it, and then
yeah.
I mean, it can't be more like
crazy topical.
Everyone should watch this movie right now. With what's going on, but no one's going to because it's 3.5 hours long and it's Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, I couldn't. Yeah, it opens with a caravan of immigrants.
I know.
With Christopher Walken, who plays kind of a marksman for the Stock Farmer Association.
And he rides along
and he's in charge of like finding people who are on their land and killing them.
He's basically a mercenary.
And there's this gorgeous shot where he's riding along the plains and he comes across this caravan and he's just yelling all these racial epithets at him.
And he's like, go back where you came from. Yeah, it's really, and it's great because in that moment, I don't know if it's then, but pretty early on. So yeah, let's set up these three characters. One is Christopher Walken, who is a mercenary.
Yeah.
He's basically a hired killer, right?
Yeah.
For this stock growers association. To clear the place out of criminal immigrants, right? And they basically put a bounty on immigrant for this kill list. They're like, we're going to pay $50 for every confirmed kill of a
essentially you could just replace it with scalp and it would be the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't sound more. It does. It's incredibly topical. It's weird. It's kind of weird to start with Walken, but whatever. He has a moment early on where a guy, I think it might even be in that first caravan scene, where the guy looks at him and he goes, "You're working for them. You're one of us."
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh,
yeah.
he's one of he's one of this class at the very least. He's poor like they are, but he's working for these guys, wiping out, people in his situation because it affords him a way of life. He's trying
to achieve that American dream by having to do some messed up stuff towards people that are exactly in the same situation, but he's just trying to get to that next level. He wants to get a home with wallpaper and blah. He wants to be a civilized. He wants to be a civilized dude.
Oh man, that wallpaper, that scene is just, oh man.
I love it so much. This
movie is amazing.
Yeah. Just so we're clear, we both loved this movie.
Yeah.
It was my first time watching it all the way through, and I was hesitant just because I was like, I knew the history of it and blah blah blah. But once I started watching it, I couldn't stop. I loved it. I loved it.
I love it. It's amazing. It is a masterpiece. It is. When he said this will be my masterpiece, I was like, you're right. I don't know why Deer Hunter gets all the love, and Deer Hunter is there is craftsmanship there. I have my issues with it, but if Deer Hunter won 5 Oscars, Heaven's Gate should have won 15. I'm like, I had
issues, and we'll get into it. Yeah. I do have issues with this movie.
Yeah.
But I mean, as a work of art, and it truly is a work of art. It's wonderful. It really is.
Yeah, it's one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen cinematically, and that's saying something. So anyway, but so that's Walken's character. We start the first, again, this is the first of many beautiful shots, and it's just this little crane down down the buildings of what is supposed to be Harvard College in 1890 or 18, I don't know where they're 1870 at that point.
1870.
Yeah, and it was a college in Oxford, but because they couldn't get Harvard, but it's supposed to be Harvard, and it just pans down or kind of cranes down, and you see a figure running in the distance, and it's
Chris
Christopherson, dressed to the nines. Running. It pans across, follows him through these beautiful old buildings with just dirt,
wet
road.
Cobblestone pavements.
Yeah, it's just great. And he runs through, and he runs, and he runs and falls in line right next to John Hurt, and you realize it is Harvard graduation, 1870, And Chris Christopherson, we established right away that he and John Hurt, the guy who had the alien pop out of his chest, an alien, they're going to Harvard graduation, and they are of this class, this 1%. They are the elite. They're the intellectuals. They're the wealthy.
They're all about to graduate to go on to be senators, and they're going to go run the country.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the type of caliber of people who, particularly at that time, like if you were in that school, you went on to do very, very important things.
Yeah. Serene, absolutely. $44 million budgeted, only $3.5 million. Yeah.
And here's one of my first issues with the movie, and it's not necessarily criticism. It's one of the things that I find endearing about his work, because I understand it, but at the same time, he is not a economical filmmaker in terms of length or getting his point across or how he, I mean, this movie went 5 times over its original budget.
Absolutely.
They're conveying one idea in this prologue, this Harvard prologue, which is they're part of the 1%, and they're very idealistic.
Yes.
Do it.
Sorry. No, go ahead. Red Wiz, thank you so much. The subscription. Thank you, dude. All right. Thank you so much. That Twitch Prime sub, Red Wiz. Thank you so much. Lots and lots of love. Much appreciated. Sorry. They're part of the 1%?
They're part of the one. I mean, so, because the prologue's what? 25 minutes?
Is it that?
It's long.
I know it is.
It
is lengthy. Yeah,
it's lengthy.
I'd say that. Yeah, probably about 20 minutes.
And it's beautiful, and I loved every moment of it.
I love it,
and I didn't find it boring or anything.
And I feel like it.
But what it does is it sets up one point, which is they're idealistic, they're rich, and it just takes 25 minutes to get essentially one plot point across, and that's it. And that's, again, I love it. It lulled me into the movie, and like there's a huge dance sequence which is just incredible.
Amazing.
It's beautiful.
Gosh, that shot.
Like it's a waltz sequence where there's just hundreds of people in all these gowns and top hats and stuff, and
it's incredible.
And it's all set to Blue Danube, and it's wonderful
from an art design and production design standpoint. I mean, it won one Oscar, which was art design, and it's all there, and it's one of the most impressive things I've ever seen.
But it's kind of the same thing with the wedding sequence in Deer Hunter, where it's like, again, I loved it, but it's also, you could have cut about half of that out or more than half and gotten the same point across without question.
And that's what I was going to say, and that's I mean, obviously that to me that is a clear comparison. I was going to draw that as well. Like I feel like again, it's there to do the same thing that the first section of Deer Hunter is meant to do, because right after this we have this, I mean, it's this lavish thing. They go and John Hurt is the class orator, and he goes up and makes everybody laugh, and he's just like, he's this brilliant kind of, he's the class clown, but he's also, he's an intellectual, and he's a great speaker, and they have this, it's really, I mean, really great, authentic seeming graduation sequence, and they go and do the dance, and it's great. And the point is to establish that they are part of this world, and then also make you kind of immerse you in this world.
And it does that
before they pop you over to the old western section of the movie, which is this immigrant story. Because this is to go. Chris Christopherson and John Hurt come from this world, and to me that's very important. And it really.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no. And I think in the same way, I think the Deer Hunter does the same thing. It goes, here are these guys in this Pennsylvania town, is it Pennsylvania? And it's just coal miners, and they're all friends and whatever. And there's this big, Russian sort of immigrant community, and then bam, Vietnam, right?
Right.
And to me, not only is the one in Heaven's Gate act literally shorter, but to me, when they did that in Deer Hunter, I was like, I get it, and none of this is compelling. I get what you're trying to do, and for me, it's not landing. I'm not feeling like I'm part of this. I'm not feeling, you're saying things that indicate that you want me to feel this connection with him. I kind of feel it with the deer hunt and stuff. And then we pop into, and we talked about that moment where like rhythmically it worked for you.
You're right.
It did not work for me. This one, total opposite.
Yeah.
I'm just in here, and then it comes back to bear, because the core tension of the film is this landed class, this 1% versus the poorest of the poor, these immigrants who are just trying to scrape by any way they can. And that is so core to the film because we have these two characters, but also Chris Christopherson, who is part of this 1%, who could live this life and just have a life of luxury if he wanted.
And there's a perfect line later on where he's just like, you know what I hate about you, Jim? Because his name's Jim Averill. And he's like, you know what I hate about you? What does he say?
You're pretending to be poor.
He's like, yeah, you've got it all. Like, you've got wealth and stature, but you pretend to be poor.
It's almost like he's vacationing. And and he's
and he didn't have a response to that because he knows it.
Yeah.
Because it's true.
But also, he just he cast off this life of luxury to kind of go do something that I guess he feels needed to do. He is essentially
he wants to do something meaningful, yeah.
It's
it's honorable what he's doing,
absolutely,
without question. But there's also the other side of that, which is he does come from, I mean, he doesn't have to worry about money, and he doesn't have those problems. And that's a really interesting, just inherent dynamic and conflict right there internally, because how can you relate to the people you're trying to defend even when you come from this higher society type thing?
And in a lot of ways, it seems like, they're like, they would be like, thank you for doing this. You don't have to do this, and you are here choosing to do this for us.
Also,
but ultimately, you're not one of us. And it's
it's like if someone was to criticize him for charity or something, it'd be like, it's just that interesting thing of like, he's like, oh, you're just helping us out.
You're just a tourist in poor land.
If you really wanted to help us out, take all your money and give it to, you know what I mean?
Fair, yeah.
It'd just be that type of thing.
And then,
thanks, Deucey Poo. That's a really wonderful thing that you just said.
Oh, that is a wonderful thing. Ducky, dude, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, is it Ducky Poo?
It is. I said Deucey as well. Will you hand me that yellow? Yeah. Because I need to make terrible sounds. Thank you for the bits. Thank you for the bits. Stick to me. And then, thank you so much, dude. Thank you for those kind words. Thank you for that generosity, both of sentiment and of bit. Thank you, my friend. But the other thing is, and then the beautiful counterpoint foil. So on one side, you've got the rich guy who casts off that thing that literally everyone he's protecting would love to have in order to protect them. And then the foil on the other side is Christopher Walken, who is one of them, and then sells out, I mean, essentially, to the rich guys and starts killing his own people.
Yeah. And so here's the thing. Going back to the Harvard thing,
right.
And John Hurt, and then I want to incorporate Christopher Walken into this. One of my issues is they have this wonderful Harvard sequence, and I was really into it, and they really linger on John Hurt.
Yes, yeah.
And then he kind of disappears for the rest of the movie. I mean, he shows up every once in a while, but he becomes not a supporting character, but like a side note in the rest of the film.
Yeah.
And I really had wished, historically or not, that they had just completely removed him and given his character traits or whatever, his arc essentially, and applied it to Christopher Walken. Because one of my issues with the film is that Christopher Walken and Chris Christopherson's relationship was not established in any meaningful way.
Yeah.
And it would have been great because if he had taken place, John Hurt's character, in the prologue, and then they both go their separate ways, and then they see then Christopher Walken becomes the villain, and then they reunite. It's all established. It's done. Everything's works into play.
Yeah.
You could have removed everything else with John Hurt because he's barely in there for the rest of the movie except for a couple of scenes, and it was just kind of weird that's how they chose to play it because they set him up in the beginning to be a major part in the movie. I felt like. And then he just kind of disappears. Yeah. And he comes back briefly, and then he just really disappears till the end of the movie when he's part of the big battle at the end.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, and I definitely like that is narratively a pretty neat, like boom boom kind of antipode set up there.
And I only say that not because I mean I love John Hurt. He's
Of course,
great in the movie,
of course,
but
yeah.
it has more to do with the fact that to build up more of I didn't feel like the relationship and conflict between Chris Christopherson and Christopher Walken's characters was established kind of at all.
Yeah.
Like they're such good actors that they make it work for what it is, but you have to do a lot of your own guessing as to what the nature of their past relationship was. And
I don't, but I don't know necessarily that it.
like, can you tell me what they're?
Yeah, I got a sense of it, and I'll say that it it all works for me, and I definitely understand what you're saying. I love the John Hurt character, and I like him sort of as just a counterpoint to both of them, because he's sort of the guy who. It almost what I almost wish instead is that they had added some sort of meaningful interaction between him and Chris Christopherson later in the film.
Sure, that could have worked too.
Yeah. Because they do have it later where they see each other when they're older.
Yeah,
but it's before and he's like, do you know
before everything goes down.
Yeah, he's like, do you know what they're doing?
So that's his other big scene, and then he kind of disappears.
He does, and then he comes back, but it's interesting because he is. The core thing is that there is this giant injustice that's about to take place in a cash grab. This land corporation, this land fraternity, essentially, is going to come in and murder all these innocent people. Chris Christopherson has already made this choice anyway, but he goes, "I'm going to protect them." Mm-hmm. Christopher Walken is working for that company. And I feel like it's implied that, well, I don't know, maybe he knew, but he was turning a blind eye, or he didn't know, or something. But he has to deal with that then. And he's he's conflicted. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
But what's the relation between them?
Yeah, because I genuinely don't know.
I don't think it is like a close friendship. I think that they're aware of each other's existence.
Just through Isabella?
Yeah, essentially. Well, yes, and everyone seems to know Jim, and everyone seems to know him. And I think that
because Jim is the sheriff of this county, by the way.
Yeah.
And Jim is Chris Christopherson, and his role 20 years after the Harvard sequence is he is the sheriff of Johnson County. Right. And so when all this immigrant stuff and this death list comes into play, he takes a hard stance where he's like, "You can't do that."
He's like, "Don't do that." And Mike, he goes in
and he tells him,
"He stay out of."
He goes into the Farmers Association or whatever, and that's where John Hurt is at, his friend from Harvard.
Yeah.
And he tells all of them, he's like, "You're not going to do this, and if you're going to do it, if you're going to do anything, then you're gonna need a warrant." And they don't have warrants and stuff. And he's like, "I'm just going to fight tooth and nail to protect my people and my county."
Yeah. But he does it in the most badass.
Oh, he's badass.
He's such a badass.
He's such a badass in this whole movie.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Walken's a badass. Everyone's a badass. Even like Isabelle Huppert is a badass when she shoots a couple. She's on that.
Which is another thing I want to talk about later on, but we'll get to it.
I'm like,
what's up, Diz Bible?
Yeah. What's up, Diz? But he goes and he sees John Hurt there, and he goes, "Do you know what they're doing?" And he's like, "Oh, it's this, and they're doing this, and that." And he's
John Hurt's a drunk, by the way.
He's a drunk, and it seems like more and more in response to and he's just this third very interesting reaction. One is Chris Christopherson, who's like, "Nope, that's not right. I rejected this anyway, but you're not going to come in here, and I'm going to side with these immigrants against my people." Chris Walken is sort of like struggling with it because he's like, I need this money, and this is the key to the life that I want, but it only goes so far. Because
I guess he couldn't. So I guess now that you've just said that, he couldn't have been John Hurt's character.
No, well, no,
but the whole point is that he needs to be a lower class citizen, working his way up and doing.
I think so. I mean,
that's how I took his mercenary behavior as he was like, "Well, I don't have any other options."
He doesn't.
Yeah,
he doesn't. Just like she's a madam because that's what she can do,
right?
Or she believes, right?
Okay.
And that's what she believes she can do. And then he's like, well, okay, this company that I'm working for is doing this terrible thing, and he has this. I think he's in the middle of this crisis of conscience, or crisis of he's pulled between these two needs, right? Like. Mm-hmm. And he goes in and he walks into the thing and he goes, "You better have a warrant for everybody." He just walks in and shoots a dude. It's great. Yeah. It's amazing. And so and then Sam Waterston's like, not here. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's so great but ridiculous. And
it was a ridiculous reaction, and
but he's just asserting his immediately.
It's just that whole scene because Sam Waterston is such a dick in this movie, and he's so great. But because like when Christopher Walken walks into that tent, he blows away a dude immediately.
And he's like here's Sam Waterston. The guy's like right here. Like he's leaning over him, showing something on a map.
He's like on a map,
and he just goes blam, and this guy gets poof, and Sam Waterston is so used to getting his way and feeling he's untouchable, and he knows he's untouchable that he just goes, not in here.
Yeah. He's not phased by it. He's just like, don't make a power move in this area. Yeah. Okay?
Don't kill people.
I am the leader here. It was he plays it beautifully, but he's such an asshole that I was like, I was so happy when he capped that guy and I was like, I literally leaned forward. I was like, do it.
Yeah.
Kill him.
I know. And he's like, you know, this and that. And he tells him all this stuff. He's got this authority. And he's like, you better have a warrant. And he's like, where is it? Show me a warrant for the guy who's tied up outside right now.
Yeah.
And Sam Waterston's like, I don't have one. I mean, he doesn't say that, but he's just kind of like, whatever. And he's like,
and so Chris Walken walks outside to go over to he starts walking towards the guy who they've captured.
And before that, he's this great line where he's like, where Waterston's kind of like, he's like, oh, don't get a conscience now.
Yeah.
And he's like, have you ever killed a man?
Yeah.
And he goes, no. And then,
and so Chris Walken, they just have to stare at him, and then he walks out, and he's like, he doesn't tell him off or anything because he needs the money. And he's a little bitter because Sam Washington, he does have power over him, and he knows it. And he walks out, but he just told me, he's like, have you ever killed anybody? And he's like, and he hasn't. And so he walks out, and he's walking over to this prisoner guy who's tied to like the side of a wagon.
Yeah.
And like it's just so I love how it plays out because Sam Waterston literally kind of scoots out past him and like runs past him like, I'm about to do something. And he walks over to him, he takes out his gun and he puts it right to the back of this prisoner's head and he just kills him.
But
and
doesn't even look like he
looks at Chris Walken
the whole thing goes blam, and he goes, what? Yeah. You go, oh, you're such a bitch. You are such a little bitch.
And this character who had been captured, this prisoner guy, we had kind of seen him throughout the movie up till this point as like a very minor, but like they had established him, so you felt for him.
You do.
Because they kill him in like a wide shot, and it's just very. It's that thing that it was very anticlimactic, which made it way more real.
Yeah.
And it made me hate. And like I love Sam Waterston.
Oh yeah,
because it's like it's Law and Order. It's Sam Waterston, you know.
Yeah.
But he's so good in this as being an evil dude.
He's so great. I mean, it's the sort of thing where it's like, where you hear. I mean, it is. This movie is amazing.
It's really great.
I love this movie, and it is an effing travesty that it is regarded the way it is, and that other
really
people will stay away from it and never watch it because they're like, oh, it's the worst.
And we're gonna get into the whole production history and the reaction to it because now that I've seen it and I did a real deep dive on everything that happened, Michael Cimino did go 5 times over his budget, and so you gotta put some blame on him for that. But having really researched it now, it wasn't out of like crazy egotistical malice. I think there was ego there, but I think he genuinely thought, he was like, this is going to be my masterpiece, and I have to do everything in my power to see this through to the end and make it the best I can be, no matter what the cost and what it does to my reputation. And that was his mindset on set. And, the fact of the matter is now that I've seen it, like, I think he accomplished his job. It's a truly remarkable piece of filmmaking.
It's amazing. It's
Bless you.
It's having watched it now a second time, it's one of my favorite movies. It really is.
Yeah.
It's up there. And I mean, I think that I get very defensive about films that are that I like that are just trashed. And the reason you haven't heard of it, Serene, probably is that it is just, if you look up worst movies of all time or biggest box office failures or biggest whatever, Heaven's Gate is famous in that way.
The Guardian in 2008
Like Batman
said it was the worst. They rated it the worst movie of all time,
and that's insane.
And it is insane to me, the level of vitriol that is leveled at it.
And
to this, I mean, it's had a revival, like in Esteem, like they're starting to screen it over the past couple of years at like Venice Film Festival, right before Cimino died. Because he died recently.
I'm glad that he got to see it. And
they had a big Venice Film Festival re-showing of the Criterion cut.
And got to see that people appreciate it.
And people appreciate it. Like, and again, it's very topical to today's climate and stuff. And
it's amazing. It is. The thing is, like, gosh, that's crazy that in 2008 they said that. And that just,
it is.
That reeks to me. That just smacks to me of a journalist who was like, what's the famous one? Oh, all this stuff happened. I don't need to watch it necessarily. I'm just going to say this. And I go, that's so incredibly irresponsible.
It is. And so, that's a whole other thing we're going to get into, because
and I don't know that
Vincent Canby essentially he destroyed this movie.
Yeah.
Vincent Canby is a film critic who was the main film critic for the New York Times in the 70s. And his review of Heaven's Gate when it was released was so harsh and so mean-spirited, and just, but also he's a clever writer, and he just came up with really great quotes that Cimino held a massive, rightfully so, a big grudge, because they in that all reviews, but everybody kind of looked to the New York Times, are like, oh wow, he destroyed that movie, and then everybody kind of just looked at that and was like, okay, is that what we're doing? Yeah. Okay, and everybody tried to one-up each other. All the film critics tried to one-up each other in just ripping this movie apart, and it doesn't deserve it.
And you don't want to be I look, not to be like whatever, but I used to write reviews, and there is sort of a sense of like, you don't want to be the one person who's like, this movie's great, when everyone's like, it's trash, because then they're like, what's wrong with you? And you don't. There's a bit of pressure to do that, and I guess I get that, but what I feel like,
which is why, honestly, film criticism, no offense, it's just like the weight we put on it is like, when people are like, a lot of people are like, well, we shouldn't have Rotten Tomatoes and stuff, and I'm like, well, it's just an easy way to see what the consensus is. But I understand that the idea behind that argument, because watch a movie and then form your own opinion.
I agree. I've never, it's strange because I have been a film critic, but I put like zero weight on it.
Right.
I put zero weight on a review.
Right.
Even if it's, like, I know some people were like, I just get a critic that I like tend to agree with, and then I listen to that, and I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'll read it, and I'm like, and I'll try to read it and go like, that, you're saying it's terrible, but that sounds like something I would like, or whatever. I just watch a trailer and go, I can tell if I'm gonna like it or not. And sometimes, and most of the time I'm right. One critic was Guardian. Okay, some kind of consensus of critics is the worst movie. It is. No, it is.
And that's what happened. Because
like, if you look up worst movies, Heaven's Gate will be 1, 2, 3, 4 on the list, and it's because,
and it has everything to do with the production history and Cimino as a person, as opposed to the artistic merit of the film. And that is not film criticism, and it's why, because I read a bunch of the reviews from that initial screening. And it's irresponsible journalism. It is, like, because they all ripped it apart. Everyone went in with an agenda because of how much it was spent on it,
and this
happens
all this
stuff
all the time. This happens all the time, and it's what happened to Waterworld. It's what happened to a lot of the movies.
It would have happened to Titanic had Titanic not had incredible legs and made as much money as it did and become the #1 financial movie of all time. Because Titanic was in the same boat where it was going to. Who released that? They were genuinely concerned that it was going to sink their studio. Oh, I didn't even realize, but
And Cameron would have been on the door, and
the ship can't sink.
But you can tell how a movie's going to be received the moment word starts getting out that it's like, oh, it's taking longer than expected. Oh, the budget, where they're pushing production, they're pushing it, and people immediately go, oh, that's a bad sign. And I do that sometimes. I'll be like, oh, that's, people are going to think that's a bad sign. And
it's the danger of fame as a whole.
Yeah, it's like this. It's also like,
because we love to, like, humanity loves to build people up just so we can rip them down. Absolutely. And that's an instinctual, primal thing that is like embedded in us.
I agree.
And then this Heaven's Gate thing was a perfect scenario because he had just won 5 Oscars for Deer Hunter.
Yeah.
And like a week after the Oscars, he was on set shooting Heaven's Gate. And again, it's both. It's everything outside of that,
true.
and then it's also Cimino because Cimino leaned into it and he went 5 times over his weight. You can't do that. Like you just can't. It's highly irresponsible.
Yeah.
He torpedoed a studio with a lot of people who worked for it. It's highly irresponsible of him to do that.
Although I read something that said, because I've been saying that too, that it bankrupted the studio. I mean, it was a huge. It was a huge expense to the point that other directors couldn't get their movies made at UA.
And that's the irresponsible
because they're like all the funds are going to Heaven's Gate.
Yeah.
But like I read a thing that it was like Moonraker was actually more expensive than Heaven's Gate.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And it's like so it wasn't.
And here's the thing.
But it was a huge factor.
It was a huge factor.
But they're selling the studio and then essentially.
It kind of was,
yeah.
And yes, in the selling of the studio and the people who at the top who hired him and then got fired. But the thing is like Transamerica, who owned United Artists, when they released the movie and it made what $3 million off of, and $44 million at that time was close to like $150 million dollar movie.
Yeah,
and it made no money back. But for them, they were a huge multi-billion-dollar company. They just wrote off that $44 million. Their stock dropped 0.5 point for an afternoon, and then went right back. So essentially for the company who made it, they didn't miss it. They didn't skip a beat.
Right.
Like nothing happened.
Right.
Like it's considered this huge box office bomb.
Studio killer.
That studio literally killed a studio. That's not true.
Yeah.
It's just not true. And I thought it was true.
Me too.
3 days ago.
I know.
And then I watched it and I read up on it and I was like, oh, this is all blown highly out of proportion. And to this day.
And I feel like, I mean, again, it wasn't, it helped, it moved.
It moved the needle. It moved the needle,
yeah. And it was definitely a significant part of the thought behind selling off UA and essentially kind of disbanding that studio that was sort of the symbolic.
It was the director's studio.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, Charlie Chaplin and Mary Pickford kind of started it to give directors more freedom, and then this was an instance where they gave directors freedom, and it just kind of crashed. Right.
Yeah.
Now,
Wolfred, I completely agree with you.
I was going to say that too.
I completely agree with you.
Exactly, and that should be our thought.
It's never seen that way, but it's all like when people are like, "Oh, they delayed Star Wars." I'm like, "Good." It's because they care enough to get it right.
I agree 100%, totally. The one thing,
by the way, reshoots and delays on film, like, do you know how hard it is? Like, filmmaking in particular is the only art form where everything you're like, okay, do we have everything? Cool. Now we're gonna put a lot of time pressure on you, and you have X amount of time to make a fantastic piece of art, and then we're gonna cut you off.
Yeah.
I think reshoots should be inherently built into a budget, so you can make your movie, assemble it, and then still have a little bit of money left over and be like, okay, we didn't get this, this, and this. Because guess what? That's gonna fucking happen.
Yeah,
it happens all the time.
Absolutely.
And like they did on the Lord of the Rings, where they had massive reshoots, not because it was bad, but because when you're making 3 movies at once, that's such a titanic undertaking in its own right that of course you're going to want to do reshoots to just make it the best it can be.
And you learn about the movie you're making as you make the movie. At the end of your movie, you know more about the movie that you're making than when you started out.
It's so weird that film, especially when you're doing low budget stuff, and I do like a lot of client work and stuff. And they're like, okay, you got to do all this with very little money, and you got to turn out something phenomenal for no money, but within this very short time frame. And you're just like, what?
Make the magic happen.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, come on, but do it.
But do it. Do your job and be amazing at it, and just crush it. And
and it's great, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to work in. It's fantastic, but it is difficult, and jump up to the Hollywood level with the internet. We know so much about every step of production. We shouldn't.
No.
We should not. The way Cimino,
he said no press on the film.
No press. Yeah, and he locked people out of the editing room, and he was just like, and there was this quote about how he wanted it to be this big magic trick where he went off, did it himself, and then presented you with the final product, and you don't. And I'm like,
I get it.
That's what it should be.
That's what it should be.
Maybe not necessarily from the studio who's giving you the money, but I wish we could go back to that. I wish we could go back as a public to just going, directors do stuff and let's, like, they're doing this. Oh, I heard they're spending, who cares?
Yeah.
Watch the movie.
Watch the movie.
Just watch the movie. And if it was worth it, it was worth it. If it wasn't, it wasn't.
Yeah.
But don't go, if someone's like, it's like if someone was like, I'm going to bake you a cake. And you're like, oh man, I remember cake. I had a cake one time and it was really good. And they go, cool, I'm going to start cracking. Did you just break an egg? Yeah. Well, why did you break an egg? Go, nothing. That doesn't look like cake.
Yeah.
I don't like eggs. And you go, well, hold on a second. Blah, blah, blah. And you go, no. Oh, I dropped an egg. I need to make another egg. I didn't. Oh, this egg. Okay, well, I'm going to put another egg in. You put another egg in there. I don't like eating eggs.
Yeah.
You're doing it again. Hey, everybody. He just dropped some eggs and had to buy more eggs and he's putting eggs in there.
Yeah.
What is that? Nutmeg? I don't like that shit.
Like, he just wasted 2 eggs.
Yeah.
And now he threw those out.
Yeah.
And now he's putting 2 new eggs in to start over.
Yeah.
He's like, well,
what is that?
But we have those eggs.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, they're
It's
there.
fine.
It's fine.
You like cake, right?
Yeah,
just go outside and wait for your fucking cake.
It's a trial and error thing. We're figuring it out, and it's okay.
Yeah. And then you go, and then you're like, put a little salt?
Yeah.
I don't want salt in my cake. Look, man, that's how I make a cake. You liked the cake last time. Just don't. And then you go, I want someone else. This guy makes terrible cakes. Don't buy his cakes.
Yeah.
And you're just like, shut your mouth. You are not a cake maker. Yeah. You are a cake eater. So shut up and eat cake.
It's a real...
when it's done.
I really do... I mean, I've dealt with it. I've dealt with it where, like, I've had pressure put on me to do something in a short time frame, and you're just like, you know, there's an artistic process to things. And it's just like, and mine's going to be different from somebody else's, but like if you can't get behind the way it's got to be made in order to make it work, then it's just like, what are you doing? Marie
Antoinette, exactly. It's like, yeah, have you ever seen an oil painting being made?
Yeah.
And you're like, green, there's not green in vases. And you're just like, shut your mouth.
Wait.
I know how to do this, I promise.
And to be good?
And if there's a chance for it to be good, it's certainly not helped by someone looking over you, breathing down your neck and be like, let me use my colors though.
Yeah.
Here, let me give you a picture of a face that I like.
Yeah.
And do that. And you go, great. You want a copy of the face you already have? You want something else new that you like that you didn't know you were going to like. You stupid son of a bitch.
We've both had firsthand experience, so we're all fired up over here.
Man. Anyway.
The Avatar sequels are an interesting example, but he's also shooting 4 of them.
Yeah. Hey, can we quote those? Yeah. Exclamation point quote, whatever. They won't get saved, unfortunately, but those are good quotes. It's James Cameron, so he's got enough of a track record that he can do literally anything he wants.
I sure wish he wasn't doing those, by the way.
And doing something else interesting?
Just anything else, because he's too talented. I didn't hate Avatar. It's just like, I don't want to revisit that world 4 more times. 4 more times for a total of 5 movies.
Hey, do you like cake?
We need to shirt.
You should do filmography shirts. Filmography. Do you like cake?
Yeah.
Honestly,
we should be doing shirts. We'll talk about it.
You guys want some shirts? Shut up and just wait for your shirt. Don't tell me to make my shirt. Sorry. The other thing is that it blows my mind though, because some of the things, you know, you're like, oh, Cimino is a nightmare, and you read some of the things that he was doing, and you're like, this sounds like stuff that Kubrick did. This sounds the stuff that we revere Kubrick, and these legendary stories of director insanity that resulted in movies that we like, right? And it just, like, to me, honestly, this is gonna sound the way it's gonna sound. But you take Heaven's Gate in terms of epics, put it up against Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah.
Put it up against what's the other one?
Gone with the Wind.
Reds. Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
It actually reminded me of Gone with the Wind a couple times, where I was like, the craftsmanship on this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Reds. Reds is another one we'll have to do at some point.
Reds, but I'm like I would. Gosh.
And guess what? When you get into this type of epic style of filmmaking, you're gonna have these type of production issues.
Yeah.
Like Gone with the Wind had similar stuff. Cleopatra. Yeah. You know, it's when you're working on a massive canvas where just that by nature of the story you're telling, you have to build sets that aren't there.
Yeah.
You have to cast a lot of people and put them in period clothing.
Yeah.
You have to find the right carriages and things like that. And this all gets ramped up to another degree with Cimino, though, because he was such an obsessive... Like, this dude had OCD, for sure. And he used it fruitfully, though, because he cared so much about the authenticity of what was seen on screen and the detail that, there's the famous quote or the famous, line of, one day into filming on Heaven's Gate, they were 5 days behind schedule.
Right.
And within the first week, he had spent $1 million in the first week, and they had only come away with a minute and a half of usable footage.
Yeah.
And so...
But think about how good that minute and a half.
But think about that. But
seriously.
And again, I'm not like Cimino does need to take a significant amount of blame here, because you can't, towards the end, they shot the Harvard sequence at the very end of production. And by that point, the studio was they were like, you have this amount of money to do it. And if you go one penny over or over time, we are going to pull the movie. We're going to fire you from the project, and we're just going to cut it together the way we want it. And all of a sudden, he got in line, and he was on time and on schedule. And it's just like, so there's a factor at play that he was embellishing his tendencies because he wanted to make his masterpiece at whatever cost. And there's something to be admired there, but at the same time, you do have a fiscal responsibility as a director, especially at that time period, to be on budget.
I agree with that. That is absolutely true.
Do.
And that is, I mean, you've made promises to people, whatever, and there's that sort of compromise two masters kind of thing, right?
Yes.
You are loyal to your art, and you're loyal. You have to be loyal at some point to
the people who giving you an insane amount of money to go make your art.
To go make your art, right? So it's the Christopher Walken thing. It's not.
Yeah.
No, it's not. But at the same time, it's like, I can totally be like, yes, he's fiscally responsible. He needs to. There are considerations there. But on the other hand, I go, but that is separate from the effect the movie has. You know
Absolutely,
what I mean?
That's a whole other thing.
Absolutely, but I totally it reminds you of a movie you may have liked. I agree, D squared. I agree. But the thing, honestly, I think all of it. What is most tragic about it is, to me, is that it's needless, and I don't even think people understand. Like, people go, "What's the worst movie you've ever seen?" And they just want to have fun with you trashing that movie. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I mean, that's a natural instinct. But people go like, you look up worst movies ever, and you just want to go like, what are the ones to make fun of?
Sure.
And it's become that. It is a beautiful film. It is a beautiful, beautiful film. And I think there's right place at the right time, and I think it just was the wrong place at the wrong time for this to happen.
Yes.
Because they were suffering. Think about it.
Well, it could have been any other filmmaker at that moment.
Absolutely.
Because Spielberg at this exact moment was making 1941, and he was literally doing everything that Cimino was doing on Heaven's Gate, but he was doing it for a dumb comedy. And I've seen 1941, and I hated it. It was so... He just,
to me, it was boring. It was just boring.
It was boring,
and that
was the worst thing you could be for a comedy.
That's the thing.
He just threw money at the screen.
Yeah,
he just kept throwing money at the screen.
The roller skate scene is beautiful. So many scenes are beautiful.
Yeah.
But here's what I'm saying. Like, think about this is why this is kind of for a number of reasons. This is why this comes in at this point in our New Hollywood discussion, because all this stuff that we talked about, where the New Hollywood started and created all this freedom for directors, because studios were like, we don't know what to do. We don't. All this stuff started in 1968 with Bonnie and Clyde and The Graduate. And think about it. At this point, it's 1980.
Yeah.
And we've had more than a decade of studios going, we don't know what to do, but the one thing that works is to give money to these crazy kids who go off and make something real that we don't know how to make. But the one thing we know how to do is to give them money and give them freedom.
Yeah.
And it's resulted in some movies that really connect with people, and movies that are great and beautiful, and we don't know how to manufacture them like on an assembly line. But all we know is that the formula is money, young directors, freedom.
Yeah.
That's what we do. And they've been doing that for like a decade.
Yeah.
Since 1968, it's 1980. And a couple times it's gone like, whoa, Easy Rider went off the rails, but it was great. Whoa, who knows what went off the rails? It was great. Whoa, Apocalypse Now really went off the rails. It's a classic. Yeah. And I think that Heaven's Gate suffered from Apocalypse Now fatigue. It's just all this fatigue.
It was a 1-2 punch.
And they go, and they get to the point where they go like, all right, we're really, and yeah, I mean, honestly, you can't blame them. They're putting up all this money. They're a business.
Oh no, you can't. You cannot blame them.
And they go, well, but the moment one of these things blows up and doesn't work, maybe we're gonna. And here along comes Heaven's Gate.
And it's not like they even wanted it to happen. That's what makes this so tragic, and it's just tragic because you want to hate the studios for taking the control back away and taking it away from directors and putting it essentially in the hands of the studios again. Yeah. But put yourself in the shoes of the people producing Heaven's Gate or One from the Heart or to an extent Apocalypse Now, but that kind of worked out. They did it to themselves. Yeah. And that's the tragicness of it is that directors were given so much freedom, but then their egos were swelled by this because they were making wonderful pieces of art, but there is a tipping point. Yeah. And then we hit the tipping point with a trifecta of and Coppola is very guilty because he had a hand essentially in 2 of them. Yeah. It was Coppola's Apocalypse Now, turned out to be a masterpiece. Yep. That only emboldened him more. Yeah. Then there was Cimino with Heaven's Gate, and then Coppola did it one more time when this movie called One from the Heart, where he went off the rails, and then it didn't work out that time. Yeah. And he never recovered.
Yeah, that's kind of true. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen any of his more recent stuff, but like, I wonder if Sulphur Springs. Thank you for the follow. What is Sulphur Springs? What is that? Is that a reference? Is that a real place? I don't know. Anyway. But we kind of had this good discussion. I think you said that like that Coppola just kind of went back to making personal movies, which he wanted to do in the first place.
But and I'm glad. But maybe kind of. And that's kind of what he always wanted to do in the first place. Yeah. It's just that when he was given The Godfather, and then out of nowhere, The Godfather. I have seen Hearts of Darkness. Yeah. It's amazing. It's one of my favorite documentaries.
I have not seen it, and when we do Apocalypse Now, we're gonna do a 1-2. I'd like we talked about that. Yeah. And I don't know if we're gonna do them together or we'll do one week and one the other.
Because his wife made the documentary, and so she has all these recordings of him at night coming home from 12-hour shoot in the middle of Vietnam. And she's like, he was super stressed out, and there's these recordings that she made secretly of him just being like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm spending all this money, and I think I'm making one of the worst pieces of shit ever made.
Also, wait, are you recording?
Yeah. No, honey, don't He's like, what's that thing underneath your shirt that's bulging out?
Why are you holding a potted plant? What's going on? Is like a whatever? No, yeah. But so I just feel like it came along at this time, and I just have to think that these critics were driven by these reports that were coming. Like they said someone got a job as an extra.
So a reporter tried to get on set. Cimino said, I'm not allowing any press on set, which I guess might have been a new thing because clearly this reporter took it personally. Then he went undercover as an extra and was on set for 3 months and then released this scathing point by point of his experience where they were talking about all these things and that was the seed that planted the infection that took over the production of the movie.
And then I think that word got out, and then people were like ready to hate it. Like they were just ready to hate it. And
they had their knives and forks out. They were chomping at the bit to rip this movie apart.
And that's what happened.
It never had a chance. It never did.
And that's what happens that's what happened with Waterworld. It became like the budget was spiraling out of control, and it's like this. It became the biggest budget in history at that point, I think. And people were like, "All right," and it kept getting pushed and kept getting pushed and kept getting pushed, and people were ready to hate it. And Waterworld is not a masterpiece necessarily, but it's fine. It's good. It's fine. It's a solid '90s action movie, and it's interesting. It's like what if they put that on screen for you. Yeah. You've got Waterworld. Isn't that crazy?
It's weird how people hate stuff. Yeah. As if, that is a weird thing. Yeah. Where you're like, I'm ready to hate this. I'm like, what did this movie do to you? Yeah. All they're trying to do is entertain you.
Yeah. Exactly. And it in a way, it's like, it reminds me of sort of like the same, it comes from the same place as like, like the same thing kind of happened with Shyamalan, and then he started making movies that were different. But
Yeah.
but I mean, people were like, all right, and then you can it's almost like a turn you feel in the air, and you're like, people are ready to turn on this guy. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
it is. It's a weird thing because we like to build them up and
I'm
we
not
like
saying-
to break them down, and it's weird that people expect. It's weird to me because an artist can put out. I mean, it's hard making films, and especially when you're a writer director like Shyamalan, Christopher Nolan, stuff like that. People are like, well, I'm starting to see similar patterns in their work, and I'm like, well, you know why? It's because it's the same person writing and directing all these movies.
Yeah,
and that shouldn't be like unless it's crazy repetitive like story points and things like that. Like I don't know why that's considered a criticism.
Yeah. Well,
and like with Shyamalan, it's different because like when you write your with Lady in the Water, like have you seen that? It's
parts of
crazy.
It. Yeah.
And he writes a part for himself where he's the savior of the world, he's going to save humanity through his writing. It's bonkers.
I do want to see it. I do want to see all of it. I haven't seen all of it. I keep going to say Heaven's Gate, and then you say it's like Waterworld, and I'm like, so it's not at all like Waterworld.
It's not. No,
in no way is like
no.
Waterworld.
No.
I keep saying Waterworld is. I keep going
stop talking about Waterworld.
I know. I keep doing this thing where I'm like, it's like people hate Waterworld, and Waterworld is, and then my brain stops and goes like, I don't really love Waterworld.
Waterworld. I tell him, I'm like,
okay.
Waterworld is the driest movie I've ever seen. It is so bland to me, and I've seen it a bunch of times. It's not bad.
No, it's fine.
But it's gosh darn boring.
And it is in no way, the only way it is like Heaven's Gate is in this sort of like people were ready to hate it because the budget spiraled out of control.
Yeah.
And also when Waterworld came out, they called it Kevin's Gate.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And they also called it Fish Tar. Which is pretty clever.
Fish Tar is another one. Just the worst.
I know.
It's all puns and just
of your own volition do not like Waterworld. I get that. Yeah, it is weird. It's fine. Gosh darn boring is the most biting way to say that.
That was me trying to hold back a little bit.
But
the difference between with Heaven's Gate, like you can feel how passionate Cimino is in every frame of this movie, and it is heartfelt, and he is trying, and it's very well done.
And I watch it, I go, he was right. He's right.
Yeah, he's right.
He's right.
And if you disagree with some of it or you find some of it boring or whatever, that's fine. But like, I don't think he sacrificed when at least with the final Criterion version that I saw. That's a movie that is uncompromising in what it's trying to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like he saw it through to completion. And
it's just.
Oh, dude, G Squared is coming in with a hot take.
I know. I'm ignoring it. No, you prefer to watch Waterworld instead of Hook. Yep.
Ooh.
That's okay because humans can have ideas that are different and wrong. No, I'm just joking. No. No, Hook is one that Spielberg has disavowed as like, I screwed that one up, and it broke my heart to hear
weird.
that. I'm like, what's wrong?
Well,
with
he disavowed it pretty quickly. Like apparently, there's the urban legend is that after the premiere, he went into his limo and he started crying because he realized he was like, oh, what have I done? I took Peter Pan and I made him an adult. What was I thinking?
It works great. What's wrong with you? That's.
I love Hook, but
not you. I'm saying, Steven, what's wrong with you? You did the most narrative. Also, it's the writer, but you did the most narratively interesting thing. You took Peter Pan and turned him into a boring adult. You know, like, and then he has to fight his way back to be Peter Pan. It's fine. Robin Hood.
I don't hold a torch for Hook like you do. Like,
I mean,
I love.
There's
a lot to love about it.
There's a lot to love it.
There's a lot. I've seen it. I always, when it's on, it stays on.
Yeah.
Like, it's a wonderful world to be in.
Yeah.
But it's not a perfect movie.
It's not a perfect movie by any means, but there are some things in that movie that I just love, and it may be my favorite John Williams score.
Yeah, it's pretty damn good.
It's amazing. It is amazing.
And
Hook is not bad. Hook has issues. Hook has but like you watch it, I was listening to the audio in the car because that's what I do, and I cried like 7 to 8 times. No, I cried like probably 5 times, 5, 6, 7 times through the duration of listening to the entire. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love it. I love it so much. I love it. 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 Back to Heaven's Gate. Yeah, Heaven's Gate is it's great.
You broke.
I did. I broke. I have so many things written down. Gosh darn it. I love okay, so we've got these two sort of these two characters set up. Chris Christopherson, the Harvard graduate elite, becomes a sheriff to take care of these immigrants. We've got Christopher Walken, who is
mercenary. Poor mercenary. Hired to kill immigrants.
Drawing them together is this situation, but also drawing them together is the love of one woman, Isabelle Huppert, who plays Ella. I say Huppert, and I say Huppert.
Yeah. Huppert.
Huppert. She's also in I Heart Huckabees. I can't remember what her name is, but
yeah, I looked her up immediately because I was like, "Who is this?" She's fantastic in this movie.
You want to hear the meanest thing that some critic was like? Some critic was like, "She is so unappealing."
Yeah.
Oh, you read that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like she is so incredibly unappealing. It's a wonder that Chris Christopherson and Walken aren't trying to fuck each other instead of her, and it's just like,
it's weird.
Why would you?
It's weird. It's one of those things where like everything in those reviews, I was just like, you're so far off the mark. And like, it's so clear you have an agenda with your reviews because she is so wonderful in it. But here's another thing. There's another issue. She's wonderful in it. I love everything that's going on there. I just, the movie kind of takes a turn where it becomes about that love triangle. And it kind of comes back to like my wanting for a better establishment of the relationship between Chris Christopherson and Christopher Walken, because the movie starts off as like the elite against the immigrants, and that sees it through all the way to the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. But then it does shift focus for a while onto this love triangle between the three of them,
which humanizes both of the men, because otherwise they don't have anything where they're not being a badass.
And they're exploring stuff within that because she's one of the immigrants, and so she's
on the list.
And she's on the list, so it all plays into it. It's just that they spend a significant time exploring that love triangle, and I just wanted more backstory to make that work better. And everybody's doing great. Everything that's there is wonderful. I just wanted a little bit more to make it all click. So to give what was already on screen a little more weight. And that's interesting. And I'm not asking to change anything because everything that's there is wonderful. I just want a little more between the two guys to make it work.
I get you. It's true. I mean, I get that. I felt like what I got, you get in. It's almost like you kind of get it through. Almost the way, honestly, Isabelle Huppert like talks about their relationship once or twice, and that's kind of how you get it. And I'm not saying like I'm with you because there's the moment where he walks into the, but it's so great. It's so great to me. They keep them apart.
Yeah.
For so long. Yeah. And you're shown Chris Christopherson. Then you're like into Christopher Walken, and he's doing, and then you're back to Christopherson, back to Christopher Walken, and they're kind of like, it's like this thing where it's almost like one shows up and then leaves, and the other one shows up at the same place, almost kind of like that, where it's just like they're both these kind of like, sort of almost notorious or just they're very focused drawing figures in this town.
Yeah,
and you don't want to f with either of them.
Yeah,
and they're kind of the two toughest dudes, and then there's this moment where Christopherson is there, and upon hearing that Ella, she says, she lies, and she's like, he wants me to go away with him, when really what Christopherson is saying is he wants her to leave before this war happens. He wants to get out of here, and she's like, you mean go with you? And he's like, no, leave, because I don't want you to get killed. And he just won't say I care about you, but he's like, just get out of here. And I guess he's like, you should know by the fact that I'm not telling anyone else to do that. You're the only person I spend time with, whatever. He's like, you should know. And she tells him that, and Walken's like, what? And he goes and goes and sees Christopherson, and walks in, and it's this great moment where like the entire bar clears, and it's just him and Chris Christopherson, and Jeff Bridges, who's also in this movie.
Oh yeah, Jeff Bridges is in this movie.
And he's great,
and he's awesome.
Yeah, although at the beginning, like his first 2 lines, I was like, oh, he's doing
Later,
an
Wolf
accent. Oh, later, Wolf. Lots of love, man. Yeah. Oh gosh, dude, lots of love always. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here, my friend. Yeah, and then but early on, not to distract myself, and because I'll never get back. But Jeff Bridges, the first couple lines, I was like, is he doing an accent? Because it's really bad. And then the rest of the movie, he doesn't have an accent.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's very weird.
It's weird. Yeah.
And I was like, but cool, because I don't want him to do an accent. It's almost like it's almost like the Prince of Thieves thing, where like there are like 2 or 3 scenes. Not
this
if
is
that.
hard. Let's
Yeah,
just,
and they just go like, forget it. You're
Yeah.
Robin Hood from Iowa, and it's
Yeah.
fine. And it's the same thing with this. And he like his lines are like later on he's just throwing in colloquialisms and just like kind of whatever. And but also his role got expanded. It was a much smaller role.
Really?
So I'm wondering, yeah, like because like Cimino loved his performance so much that he like added
he's
more
great in it.
and wrote more and they wrote more into it. And I'm wondering if they were just kind of like, forget it, just be chummy with it, and they were just like, forget the immigrant stuff, forget the year of Russian, Ukrainian, Czech, whatever the heck they are descent, because it's really hard because like she's French, who knows what they are. But anyway,
and it's also like it's interesting
Hey,
how I watched like some behind the scenes stuff where they're talking about the movie and like years later, and Jeff Bridges and Chris Christopherson in not so much
Walken.
No, what's his name from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Brad Dourif.
Yeah, Brad Dourif, who I love.
Yeah,
Brad, he's just one of the best.
He like hardly speaks in this movie. I mean,
know.
he gets like
gets
a good
his
scene,
one
but
speech,
he's just there, and I go, oh yeah.
I think he had a more of a difficult time on set, but like Jeff Bridges and Chris Christopherson, they talk about Cimino in very high regard,
Which is great.
and they're like, yeah, he got a bad rap because he was wonderful to us, and he really cared.
And they're very like I read it where it was like they're very proud of their involvement.
And they're very proud of the movie,
which is so great. I would break my heart if Chris Christopherson and was
no, to this day, that's what was so. It was almost like it was very endearing to watch Chris Christopherson talk about it, because he was just like, yeah, no, I'm like, yeah, it took me off the A list, but you know, I mean, look at it.
Yeah.
He's like, it was very unfair what happened, and we were all very surprised, but I stand by it, and I stand by Cimino.
Have a good one, MM7. Lots of love. Sound for some stuff today. How are you? Oh, yeah, what's up, man? What's up?
And by the way, Jeff Bridges ended up buying the cabin.
Yes.
That,
I love that. I love that. But which log cabin? Like
the one, I think
that they build essentially.
Like Chris Christopherson's cabin that they have the shootout at the end of the movie.
Right. Because like
he bought that one.
They build it
and Jeff Bridges was like, yeah. Like years later, Cimino was like, how do you like living? Because he moved it from Wyoming or wherever they were filming, and he moved it like a couple hundred miles to like some other place.
Yeah.
And Cimino years later was like, how do you like living in that cabin? He's like, I love it, man. I think it's fantastic. It was a little rough the first like 6 months or so, because every time we would go there, there were still squibs that were logged like in the wall, and every once in a while they would just go off.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing! Oh my gosh, I love that so much.
So Jeff Bridges, like, he was talking about that cabin at one point, and he was like, I think about Heaven's Gate often.
Yeah. Because
every time I go to that cabin, you know, a couple times a year, and I think about that movie all the time, really. And he's like, it's one of my favorite experiences.
Beautiful. It's amazing. I've never seen Days of Heaven. I desperately want to. This is what this is what I imagine Days of Heaven is like.
No, Days of Heaven is a great movie. It's a lot more inscrutable. It's the narrative. It's when Malick starts to go full Malick.
Yeah. Gotcha. I really need to see that.
Like, I would say,
because Badlands is essentially Bonnie and Clyde. It's beautiful.
Badlands is my favorite Malick movie because it has a narrative.
Yeah.
Days of Heaven is wonderful, but I would argue that Tree of Life has more of a narrative arc than Days of Heaven does. I mean, and again, Days of Heaven has a narrative there. It's all there. Yeah. But it's where he starts going full Malick. Yeah.
Well, but anyway, sorry. Well, on the relationship between the two, Walken walks into the thing, and he's and
He
Christopherson.
proposes to her.
Well, sorry, but he walks into, yes, he does. He proposes to Isabelle Huppert, and she's like, Jim asked me to go with him, so he goes to see Jim. That's the first time we see him together. The bar clears out. Chris Christopherson just kind of gives a look to Jeff Bridges, and he goes away to the bar to let them have their kind of thing, and Christopherson goes, "You're a friend, so I'm gonna cut you a break and tell you the stuff you're doing isn't great, and I don't want you to whatever." But it's just kind of, so they're just in that moment he says, "You're a friend," and you do kind of go like, well, how much of friends are they? But through what other people say, what I gather is that they were just mainly like aware of each other and had respect for each other. You know what I mean? Because there's this whole thing. Because what's amazing, what's just there's this tender, or there's this thing at the end where she, is it when she comes to him and Walken's been killed, and she goes, "He loved you."
Yeah.
And it's just very, to me, I'm kind of like, I think Walken, because there's that moment you're like these two guys, or these two almost like Ford and Bras and Hamlet, where it's just kind of like, these two guys who are being set up, and there's this tension, and then they finally meet, and they kind of go away, and Walken says like, "Hey, Jim, life is way more fun when you're not around for me, because I just get to run wild." And it's just this thing where they're aware of each other, but I think Walken like looks up to him. I mean, I think that because there's this thing where like they're both badasses, and then Walken shows up, and then Christopherson wins. Like,
I think that's what they were trying to set up. I don't think that it did it.
Okay.
And I think it's all. I think what's there is there. It just feels like a scene got cut. A couple scenes got cut between them to establish. Because I love the sentiment of it, and I love the way it was written and presented, and he's like, he loved you, and all that. Like, it was all great. I was just like, I wish that meant more to me, because it didn't land on an intellectual level. It landed for me, but that would have devastated me had they built up that a bit. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. I think it's pretty clear that they didn't build that up.
No, sure. Heaven's Gate was actually good, but fine. Yeah, you watched it? That's awesome. Thank you so much, Snows, for those 20 months. Scription. Thank you so much, my friend. Lots and lots of love for those 20 months of unbelievable support. Thank you so much. I think I can see where that is. It didn't feel like a lack to me, because to me, thank you so much. Lots and lots of love, man.
20 months. That's a lot of nuts.
That's a lot of nuts. That's a lot of nuts. Agreed. You ever seen Kung Pao?
I have, years ago.
Yeah.
I think I saw it at South by when it premiered.
It premiered at South by?
I think so, yeah. Because what's his name was there?
Steve Odenkirk?
Oh, no, I'm thinking of...
Kung Fu Panda?
No.
Trio.
What's Kung Pao?
Kung Pao is the where they take old kung fu movies and dub it over.
Yeah, that's not this one.
Have you not seen it?
No.
You haven't seen Kung Pao?
No.
You haven't seen Kung Pao.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
I can't. What am I thinking of now? It's gonna bother me. Kung Fu no, I don't know.
Shaolin Soccer? I don't know. Thank you so much, Osnos. I get it. I get what you're saying. We could have seen more of that relationship. To me, I feel like I get what their relationship is in that interaction, because I don't think it got much warmer than that.
No, it's fine. I just I agree with that too.
It's like that.
I think it's the one pretty clear miss for me that I was like, no, just give me a little bit. I'm not saying they need to be palling around.
No.
Just build that either that distant admiration or anything.
Totally.
Just with 2 more scenes.
Totally.
And I would have been like, cool. This is, because that was honestly my one. I was like, I don't even think this can be argued. It's just like, yeah, you didn't do it. And that's okay. It doesn't necessarily take away from anything, but it's the one clear, like, I don't really think that this is more of a matter. I'm just like, maybe you didn't put it in for time reasons or what, or you just didn't get it in the swath of making this epic thing. But it's the one clear thing that I'm like, I wish there would more of that. And that's it.
I'll certainly agree that it seems like one of those things where something probably was cut.
It feels like that.
I'll certainly agree with that. I didn't miss not having it, but Goose Show! Subscription! Thank you for those 8 months of unbelievable support. Thank you so much, my friend. Lots and lots of love. Thank you for being here. Thank you for that. Lots of love, dude. But and all of that, because I just, but I mean, yeah, same. It just like this felt like this for that kind of like sort of like tight, like,
sure,
massive infringement.
Yeah,
you're right,
yeah.
but that's not. Yeah, that's not taking away from what you're saying. I agree. But it's just great. So thank you, Gusho. Thank you so much.
But again, they're both just such great actors that
it would be great to have more
in that one bar scene with Bridges and behind the counter with the gun. Like I didn't. It's not like I needed. I got enough out of that.
Yeah.
I was because they're just such good actors that I felt an animosity, yet something weirdly. Yeah. It was both, and that's what was cool about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah.
They're rivals and yeah.
It's weird because this movie is kind of messy and narratively in some ways, but it's in the same kind of way that like this movie reminded me a lot of Jesse James.
Yeah. Those are my two favorite Westerns now.
And now that I've seen this, I'm like, oh, they pulled a lot of, visual cues and kind of things from Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet that
like
Dominic loves Heaven's Gate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, to me, it's like, there are these moments that link, and this is the difference. And I'd be interested for myself to try to figure out for myself why, because it would be instructive from a craft point of view to find out why this worked for me so well and Deer Hunter did not, because in these moments where we're lingering, like they're like, it's almost like they're duplicated shots sometimes, where it's just like, Walken's looking and she's down and then back, but none of it felt overblown or bloated to me. It just felt like a novel. It felt like I'm reading a novel.
You're living in a world and you're just exploring. Some of it has a very slice of life quality where you're just living with these people,
almost like an open world game.
And it's weird because like that's why it's hard to argue a lot of his economy of editing, because I'm just like, well, I think it's pretty intentional, because from his standpoint, it's like I understand that most movies they want to get to the point.
Yeah.
For him, he's like, I want you to just live in the world. It doesn't necessarily, yes, this wedding sequence from Deer Hunter is 40 minutes long, and yes, it could be shorter by 20 minutes, but that's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I think that there's added value by just living in this world, living in this wedding sequence. And he's correct.
Yeah, I agree. And
he is absolutely. It's just a difference of artistic interpretation, and he chooses to do it that way, and most people don't, and it's not wrong.
No, not at all.
It's not wrong.
Not at all. And I think it's just drawn into thrust into such sharp relief for me, because the same filmmaker employing a number of the same obviously the same sensibilities as an artist, does a lot of the same things in Deer Hunter and Heaven's Gate. And for me, one engaged me fully and I wanted all of it, and the other one just did not.
Yeah.
And I would be interested to figure out why that is for me. I don't know why.
I think because this one feels more.
It feels
realer to me. It's weird
it
because
does.
Because it has that thing where I'm like Jesse James to me is a little messy, and we've talked about this before, where I'm like, it's messy, but that's what it kind of makes it as good as it is.
Yeah.
Because you just feel like you're in it, and you're just it goes off on these weird tangents, these kind of side story things or whatever, and then it comes back, and you're just living in this world, and you just do it, and you're with it. Yeah. And this same thing with Heaven's Gate, where I'm like, it's just moving at its own pace and choosing to focus on things that it finds of interest, and And I say that I wish it hadn't moved onto the love triangle a bit, but that's what it chose to do, and that's fine because it's that, and it's this other arc of 1% versus immigrants and that combat and everything.
And and to me,
And that's why it's 3.5 hours.
Yeah, and the love triangle for me is what drew me into it so much, because I cared for all three of those characters, because it's amazing, because you see Walken and Christopherson being these badasses, and then with her you see them being like unbelievably vulnerable to the point that like when Walken walks in and sits down kind of the second time he's with her by himself, and I'm like, oh, he's gonna talk. He like really hasn't talked.
Yeah.
And then he's just throughout the film with her, you see him just like wrought up and just like a child. Like he's so vulnerable.
Yeah.
He's so vulnerable, and I mean it's fascinating to watch, and it was amazing to watch these two guys play both sides of that humanity, and then also because Christopherson as well is just like, I mean she kind of wrecks them both. She's got them.
She does wreck them, and there was a very impactful scene towards the end because Christopherson tells her to leave multiple times.
Oh yeah.
And she chooses not to. And then once the 1%er farmers associations start killing people, and it's all about to come to a head, and they're about to invade the town.
Yeah.
And everybody starts freaking out about it. She comes to him after, spoiler alert, Chris Walken gets killed. Mm-hmm. In this scene right here.
yeah, and
he's about to get shot up real good, and it's a fantastic scene.
Sure the heck is. Gosh, I really want.
It's what a gorgeous image. Like, this is only half of it, but there's a wide shot of him just standing in this, because that's his house burning behind him, and he's got that bench over his shoulder, using it to block bullets, and it's badass.
It's
and
amazing.
It's poetic, and it's beautiful, and it's amazing. He eats it. He dies. She races back to Chris Christopherson, who's back in town, and she tells him, and she kind of is like, what do we, she kind of is looking to him for something, like sympathy or something, and he's shaving as she's like leaning on his back,
and he just hasn't moved.
Just like, he's like, what do you? The gist of it is, he's like, I told you. He's like, what do you want me to say? I told you so.
And she didn't say anything.
And then he goes, I told you.
I told you so.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's
great.
Fantastic.
There's so many great lines.
Yeah.
And then she goes. And then
really, truly, I was just like, there's a lot of just badass lines in this movie.
So, and like, there's, oh my god.
But not sold in a badass way, just sold in a very human way.
Absolutely.
Like, that poor line was really great.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote down so many lines. And the thing, and the other thing is, like, she has chosen not to leave. She's like, I can't leave. This is my home. This is where I'm staying. And he's like, this is just stuff. And she's like, this is all I have. This is all I have. And she's staying there. And he's like, okay. And
it's all just things.
And exactly. And then the other thing is that she has, like, Christopher Walken, like, Chris Christopherson, she says, you buy me things, but he asked me to marry him. Yeah. And so she goes with him because Chris Christopherson will not break down and say, I love you.
But he says
and
something.
will you marry me?
He says something to the extent of, it's like, well, maybe I wanted to.
Right.
And she's like, well, that's not good enough.
Yeah, and she said that's not good enough, and it's just like, because he goes, what? How do you know? He's like, maybe it was in my head, my mind to say it the whole time.
Yeah.
And you go, good line. Then she goes, that's not enough, and you go, better point,
yeah.
better point. She
went, so good.
And so she basically goes off with Walken because he's the one who goes.
He's willing to commit.
He's like, marry me, and they're both in love with her, but Christopherson won't say it. And so then when he gets killed, and she has decided not to leave because she's not afraid of the violence, or she's.
Well, she says, this is everything I have.
This is everything. Yeah, she doesn't want to leave, and then she chooses to go off with Walken. She comes back after he's killed, and she's like, he's dead. And she lays against his back and says, he's dead, and he just doesn't nothing. And she goes, say something. He goes, what do you want to say? I told you so.
Yeah.
I told you so. And she goes. Oh, come on, you can't do what the fuck or something.
Great French
actress
impression.
Yeah, thanks.
Ooh,
and
what the fuck?
What's the fuck? Oh, come on, what do you want?
Yeah. Baguette.
Exactly. That's literally what I was going to say. And then he goes, he goes, he made his choice. And then I go, and like with him, it's like, and so did you. And he goes,
yeah.
and so did you. And I'm like, yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Dang, it's so good. It's like all
and that's
those...
how they kind of leave it for a minute, because
Yeah.
then she leaves because
Yeah.
he's real cold about it. But like,
She
boy.
goes off to
But
fight
he's
this
right.
war.
And then okay, so
And you're
this
like, go fight the war with them.
and then this is my other issue.
Yeah.
She turns it, and it's
Yeah.
awesome, but at the same time, like, she turns into a okay. And I'm gonna. There's one other thing I want to talk about in conjunction with this. She turns into a total like gun wielding badass.
Yeah.
Kind of out of nowhere.
They
like,
planted a little bit before.
a little bit, but like
Did
she
she shoot the
starts.
dude?
She's like fucking leading the charge of this battle at the
Awesome.
end. This amazing epic battle where they're surrounding the farmer. They decide before the Farmers Association invades their town, they're gonna go to them.
And they're a bunch of peasants, but there's 200 of them, and
there's only 50 of the other guys.
50 trained soldiers, but
So they all get on their horses and they go find the Farmers Association out in the middle of a field,
Amazing.
and they start circling them. And there's a wide shot that is the most haunting. Like it's from like, it looks like a mile away,
Yeah.
and you just see the dust getting kicked up as they start circling around them, and it's gorgeous looking.
which is all dust that they came in and blew with fans.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
and it's so beautiful. But anyway, she's like leading the charge on this, and I don't know, it just. I was like, there's a lot of macho moments that felt out of place. Like because there's another scene where she gets raped by some of these Farmers Association thugs who are waiting for her in her house, and as she's getting,
It's very disturbing.
it's very disturbing. She's getting like
because of the way
by
that
multiple guys,
and it's just it's not, in a weird way, it's not graphic, but it is realistic in the
It's
sense that
too
it's
realistic.
just
It just
like they're
lingers on her
holding on
face,
it.
yeah.
And we were talking about. Oh, sorry. Go
Well,
ahead.
I was just gonna let me just finish this up.
Please do.
That's happening, and Christopherson comes in and he bursts in through the front door, and they're in the living room. And he bursts through the front door with 2 guns in his hands, and he kills every single person in this in the room, like 4 guys, plus the guy that's like currently raping her, and he shoots all of them and magically doesn't kill her, and like he gets them all very quickly. And I was like, oh, I wouldn't question that moment, and I would think that would be pretty badass if I was watching a John Wayne movie.
Yeah.
But the pattern and the tone and the world that they had set up, immediately I laughed. I did, because I was
Really? Oh,
I was
that's
just like, oh
interesting.
wow, that's not from the same movie. It was so badass. And this is a thing that Cimino does. Like, he loves his macho moments, and yet he has the soul of like a poet.
Yeah.
But those two, but I think he also really enjoys that gung ho shit.
Yeah.
And you see both of them warring with each other
Yeah.
in both these movies, and I think it's gonna happen. I'm gonna watch Year of the Dragon like this next week. 'Cause,
Really?
Like I'm
really
full
watch it.
on the Cimino train.
Choo choo Cimino, mother. Yeah. No, but that honestly, and it's interesting again because that was the thing that I had with Deer Hunter, where it was like you're trying to be like Diner,
Yeah.
but you're being like a 3-hour version of Diner that then turns into Rambo.
Yeah.
And I had that issue in this one. I wanted those moments so badly because I was like, because the things that were happening. And by the way, we'll talk but just briefly. We talked last episode, just out of happenstance, about depicting sexual assault in movies and kind of using it as just a plot point or whatever. This to me is disturbing in the sense that it is shot just very matter of factly, like it's almost like a wide shot just in the room as it's happening, as if someone were literally just holding a camera filming, because that's literally what's happening. And it is, and
I also felt like they earned it because
they did earn it. Yeah,
they worked it directly from the plot, because they come to her and they do what they do to her because she has been taking cattle as payment.
Yeah.
From
she's a
people who
madam,
are
yeah.
visiting her brothel, and some of those cattle have been stolen from Farmers Association's owners' lands, and immigrants have been taking them, and instead of giving them to the family or whatever, they've been using them to go to the brothel. Yeah. And that's what is fascinating about this movie is like you hear that, and so they use that as the excuse to do the entire rape sequence, and it's horrible and awful and horrific. But when you hear that, and they say, oh no, she has it's also true that she's been accepting cattle
Right.
from people. And so from the farm association standpoint of invading the town and doing like you can also maybe not sympathize, but you understand their motivation.
Well, and also and
because they're again, and they talk about it a lot. They're like, it's the rules. It's all about the rules because legally they're allowed to go and kill all these people because people are stealing their cattle.
Yeah.
Granted, it's out of complete desperation, and they're taking over all the land anyways, and they're like encroaching on everything. It's just an interesting. I was like, oh, you guys actually gave them a legitimate reason
to go.
You didn't just make
everybody.
them a villain, like a villainous posse of people running around killing people. You were like, oh, these people are actually stealing from them as well.
Yeah,
it was just like that.
It is
in a lot of movies, you wouldn't get that.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, certainly they do kind of go. There are moments where you're like, oh, they're stealing stuff.
But then they do the rape scene. You're like, oh, they took it way too far.
Well, and the thing is,
they even address it in the movie where he's like, these
are the people you're working for. He says to Walken.
But Christopher Stockton, he's like, you were within your legal right up until this. It was something like, or maybe it was Walken. He was like, you were in your right to do what you were gonna do until you did what you just did.
Exactly. And Walken comes in because Christopherson comes in, shoots them. Walken comes in equally too late, but more so, and comes in and is like, what? And of course he's in love with Ellen, sees that, and he goes, this is the sort of people that you're working for. You see that? And it's just it's horrific to watch, but it's played that way.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. And it works in the sense that it shows that, like, under the guise of the law, these people are doing horrific, terrible, animalistic things. Particularly those three men. I mean,
that's what I'm trying to get at.
Exactly.
It's like that's what makes it as horrific.
Yeah.
Because they didn't just play it. They didn't play it surface level for an arc. Like
no.
they dug in deep and they were like, no, they're legally right to do this, and then they took it too far, which is what humanity fucking does all the time.
It moves the narrative forward. It increases the stakes just tremendously, and he goes, "You think it's going to get worse? Why do you think they did that?
Yeah,
if it wasn't going to get worse." And he's like, "This is what you were staying here for." And she's like, "I don't care. I'm still staying." And it also symbolically is what this government sanctioned group is doing to this land and to these people. It's just treating them. It's just coming in and exerting this authority, complete and total authority over them, and saying we can do anything we want, and we're going to kill you because you're in the way, because you're inconvenient. I mean, I think it is horrific, and I would caution you, if you haven't seen it, that's in there. Again, it's not graphic, but it's all the more disturbing almost because it isn't. They just treat it very matter of factly, but it is. But it's treated with the weight that it
does. They treat it with the weight it deserves.
Yeah.
And I'll say that when he burst in and he shot them all, I was like, thank God.
Yeah.
But also, I was just like, it was such a Rambo moment that I was just like, oh, I wish you would have just literally picked him up, like just done it in a more because the realism across the board is so. It is. Like, this movie feels so lived in. And I was like, that's not usually how life works. And you specifically set up this world to be a different kind. This is an anti-Western. Like, this is a different kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you gave it a real Western moment.
It's interesting. Well, it's interesting because there are a couple of those to me. Like, because Walken has a few. He just comes in. And there are a couple of moments where you're just like, oh, crap, these guys are badasses.
Yeah.
And to me, it is what... It's what, like, when people talk about like a realistic superhero movie or something.
Yeah.
To me, it's like a realistic Western that has moments that go boom, but they have the full weight of character and narrative and complexity and humanity behind it, and so that makes it even more where I go, it's a visceral release.
Because there's a lot of violent moments, and they all work for me. It was just
and
it could have even literally just been like the angle, because they shot him low and up, like a big hero moment. Like it was just a weird combo of everything.
It is. And there's the whole, like, I mean, there's this woman being victimized, and then comes a man,
and then you root for her because she did go through this horrific experience, and so I could see how they were. It became like a kind of a beautiful thing, because she was like, I'm going to get my revenge, and I'm not going to let you take away, my essence. Like, it was just this whole. I understood it, but she also. it was just kind of how they present it, because like out of nowhere she like comes storming in on a horse over this bridge, and she's just like, and it's because she's riding and shooting,
and it's
with
amazing.
I think 2 guns, and she's just going boom, 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 boom,
and
boom.
they start shooting up the carriage. The carriage begins to fall
Oh
apart.
yeah.
And it's like, I think it might have, I don't remember if it's on fire or not, but it is just falling apart and it's going to kill her. She gets up. As it falls, she leaps onto the horse and rides away on the horse. Because I was like, she got up and I was like, is she going to?
Yeah.
And it's this Indiana Jones thing.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing is, like, those
Yeah,
moments,
that's what it was. It was those two things
yeah.
combined, where she was shooting real fast, and then she literally jumped from a carriage onto her horse like a goddamn acrobat, and like it was awesome.
It is
but
awesome.
also I'm like, this is not this movie.
And I think, and I totally understand that. I totally understand that. But my reaction was like, yeah, because I wanted it so bad, and it feels so, because all of this movie is such built up tension.
Yeah.
Built up tension everywhere. Tension in relationships. Tension, is something going to happen? Tension, these guys are badasses. When do they get to show it? But and it releases, and then.
And I loved how during that scene, because she's racing to Christopher Walken, who's inside the house as it's burning. And he's about to burst out and do this final moment right here. And she's racing to him, and they kept cutting to her, like far away, but like real close on her face, and like you could hear the gunshots in the distance as she was getting closer. It was weird, but it was very effective.
Yeah, and like they do that again.
It was beautiful to me. It was weird.
Exactly, and there's another moment like that when Christopherson comes to her, and then you hear gunshots of the war going on.
Yeah,
and you're just like, this is all the same.
Yeah,
it creates the world.
It was very realistic.
Absolutely.
It was awesome. It was great.
And it is like this. It's like this. It's funny because by the end of that, by those later, and this is why I think it's just such a good use of the time, because by the time the talk about like there being tension and then a build up and a release and then a kind of payoff, the war that's been brewing the entire time. I mean, I feel like it goes on for like 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it's just this constant like boom, boom, and it's amazing. There's a ton of stuff that happens, and it is a full-blown war between like 200 people and 50 people, and they're surrounded and they're just riding around and go boom, 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 boom. All this stuff is happening.
Can you pull up the shot? I'll even Google it. I want to find that wide shot of the caravan circling the farmer. Can we show that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's such a stunning shot, because one of the things that people complained about was that for the final battle sequence, Cimino insisted on a location that was 3.5 hours away from the nearest base camp for the cast and crew. So every morning they had to get up at 3:30 in the morning, drive 3.5 hours just to get to set so they could start filming. And then they filmed all day, and then they had to drive 3.5 hours back at night and then do it all over. And they did this for a month. It took a month to film the final battle sequence.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, why on earth could you not have chosen a closer place to film?
Yeah.
But when you see the wide shot,
my gosh,
it is that's a gorgeous shot, but that's not the one I'm talking about.
End, yeah.
It's when they first arrive and they're like circling around.
Are we trying to do video?
Let's do here. Let me get in here. But when you see the final, this shot, I'm gonna try to find. You understand immediately why he chose that play. I mean, it's stunning.
Yeah, there's so much of this movie. There's so much of this movie that is stunning. So much of it, and there are just so many times when there's just like dialogue going on, and in the background you see these snow-capped mountains. You're just in this place. There's a moment where she talks to him early on, and they walk out of just a building, and they walk across, and you look at the village they've constructed, and there's a moment where I go like, oh, that almost looks like it could be a set, and then you look in the background and go, nope, those mountains, and then they walk to this gigantic glittering lake, and you're like, no, they're just there.
Yeah,
they're just there, and and that's what it is. That's what it is. And I was talking about like I'm not sure what it is about this as opposed to Deer Hunter, but I kind of am, because it's things like that. The scope of this tale, the scope of the story, and the history there, and just the grand passions and all of this, but also there's just so much to take in and look at.
Oh,
because
yeah.
the art direction as well as the natural beauty and the location of everything, it's just like you're giving me 5 minutes to look at this, and I want to look at all of it.
I know, right?
I want to. Whereas the other one is like whatever, but it's like it's diner, and I'm just looking at diner for 5 minutes. And I'm like for like 5 minutes of that shot and 5 minutes of that shot.
Right.
I'm like, oh, cool. It's a very small.
But here
personal
it's
film.
like, I mean, look at that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And when you see it in motion, because the cloud, the dust upkick, is just starting to swirl around these people, like it is.
Let me here. I'm gonna open it for people to see.
And there's another huge story, like legendary story, about how he waited for clouds to get to the right placement and how he would wait for hours. And when you see the film, you understand immediately why he did that.
He was right. I mean,
because if you look at this one image that we're about to pull up, like it is unbelievable.
Yeah.
In a movie full of them.
Yeah. I mean, and it's so much of it. It's just. It is a breathtaking film, like absolutely. There there was just, man, and there's stuff that made me laugh. I love the part where like Mickey Rourke's in this movie.
I know,
and I love that scene where he's talking about the wolf. I was like laughing my ass off.
Yeah, it was a great scene.
He grabs him by the tongue, and like really, what made me laugh was Walken's reaction to it. Like Walken's he's just laughing so hard. It's great.
He's like, I guess I should cut it off now. He's like, yeah, cut it off.
Yeah, cut it off. Yeah, do it. Whatever. Let's see here. There we go. Oh man, this should be our background image.
Yeah.
This is it. This is what we're talking about.
It's just so, and like when you see it in motion, where the horses start to swirl around the guys in the middle of the field, and they start to encircle them, and it's hauntingly beautiful. Like it is really something else.
But I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna pick up. Let's do this more. I'm gonna pull up some more images because God.
Like pull up the image of when he gets to the chicken, the cockfight.
Yeah.
And they cut, and Jeff Bridges sees Christopherson by the bar, and it cuts to him, and he's just silhouetted, and the beams of light shooting through the window. It was this shot and that shot literally made me go.
There's like I don't even. It's like hard to pick shots because. Oh gosh.
Like go to the critics at large. That one. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's real. That looks fake.
I know.
That looks fake, and that is a real set that they built.
Yeah.
And one of the crazy stories that is true is that when they were building that set, they built it once. Cimino saw it and was like, it looks off.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And they was like, it needs to be, the road in between the buildings needs to be 6 feet wider.
Yeah.
He's like, you're going to have to break it down and move it 3 feet each way.
Yeah.
And the production designer was like, well, that's going to cost a fortune. What if we just break down one side and move it 6 feet? And he was like, no,
rebuild the
it's
whole
going to
thing.
look weird. We need to do it 3 feet in either direction. So they broke all that down, and it took like a month to rebuild it all.
It's insane. Yeah. I mean, it's
and like I wish we didn't have to crop it because they shot this in like crazy CinemaScope. Like it's a very wide image. But that looks fake. Yeah. But that's real.
Yeah, I mean it's.
I mean, it's so
you look at it, and it's like if you put it in black and white, it just looks like an historical photograph.
It does,
and the whole look of the film just looks like. I mean, there's so much dust and so much gold in it. It looks like a daguerreotype, or it looks like a gold tinted old photograph. I mean, it like, gosh darn it. There's so much, and they shot stuff at Magic Hour, which made it look beautiful.
Find that shot of John Hurt drinking his whiskey before the cloud overtakes him.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's one of the most magical moments. Talk about magical realism. Like, there's a moment where John Hurt's character, who's a drunk, it's a wide shot, and he has a wonderful line, poetic line, and then he takes a huge swig of whiskey, and as he's by a train, and as he swigs it, a huge rolling cloud of smoke encompasses him completely, and then when the cloud like he completely disappears behind the cloud of smoke, and then when the cloud disappears, he's gone, and it's just
I don't remember this at all. When is
Yeah.
this?
it's look.
Yeah.
Do
Oh gosh, I love it. This is just. I don't. Like, I would have a hard time thinking of a more beautiful film. I don't know that I like that. Like
it really does have some of the most.
that. Gosh, all the and you, like the dance hall is just like all the way up. It's like it's like canvas that's like translucent almost. Like the sun just spills in on it. That's right. Everything in that dance hall looks beautiful. Oh my gosh. I mean. Oh, and that.
Oh,
shot,
this
you
one.
remember that? The American flag. Oh wow.
And like this
Yeah.
and like they cut very close afterward, but I saw a
Yeah.
shot in the behind the scenes where it lingers on it a little bit more, and he completely disappears. Like
Wow.
he goes behind that smoke, and then I guess he just rode off, but it looks like he just disappears behind that cloud.
Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna pull up. Replace. And then. Oh gosh, this one's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's one of the best introductions to a character.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
This movie, really, truly, it is.
It's great.
It's got everything. It's as badass as you want a Western to be, but it's also like,
It's got
gosh.
heart.
It does. It has just, gosh, I love it. Freaking love it.
And then can we talk about the final scene though?
So
So there's this huge battle at the end.
Oh sure, yeah.
Chris Christopherson ends up surviving. So does what's her name? What is her name in the film?
Ella.
Ella. And they decide, I think, to get married. And it kind of jump cuts to a couple months later or something, where Jeff Bridges comes to pick him up, and they're both dressed to the nines. Like she's in full white, he's dressed in a really nice suit.
Yeah.
And as they're exiting their cabin, to what I would assume, I inferred that they're going to like the courthouse to get married.
Oh wow.
Sam Waterston comes out of nowhere.
Ugh, what a bastard.
And he blows Ella away. Like he just.
It's Bonnie and Clyde style.
It's a Bonnie and Clyde style.
Yeah.
Like he caps her repeatedly.
Yeah,
And she dies in Chris Christopherson. But first of all, Jeff Bridges takes one.
He's the one that
Yeah, he eats
because
it.
and it's this beautiful like moment where they're like
They have a
whatever, and he
tender
reaches
moment.
over and she kisses him on the cheek and he just looks at her, and then
And as he's turning to the
so
wagon,
slowly,
yeah,
and
he
it's just
gets
bam!
He falls immediately. Like
I
it
went,
shook.
oh gosh!
I went like this. I went, oh.
It's actually a jump cut too.
Is it?
Yeah.
It shook the hell out.
Yeah. I went rewind watching it
Yeah.
because I was like, oh my gosh! I out loud was like, oh.
So
gosh.
Jeff Bridges killed. Then
Dead.
She's killed immediately thereafter. Chris Christopherson ends up killing Sam Waterston in the fight. Everybody else races off. He's left holding her.
Oh, yeah.
She dies in his arms. He screams, and then it kind of just fades out, and it cuts to him 10 years later.
1901 or something.
So maybe I think like 10 years later, roughly.
Yeah.
He's on a boat, a very nice yacht almost.
This is
like,
yeah. Sorry, real quick. This is the immigrant caravan.
yeah.
Which is just beautiful.
Oh, so
Look at that
gorgeous.
shot. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's so amazing. Go ahead.
And the movie ends with Chris Christopherson on a boat, a very wealthy looking boat.
Yeah.
A couple of years later, he's dressed in a very nice suit. And he goes inside. He looks very morose, very somber. He goes inside the boat into a very, very nice, ornate, bedroom cabin.
Mm-hmm.
And we see the lover, who I guess is now his wife, from Harvard.
Yeah.
Who he was making eyes at Harvard in
Yeah.
the window.
Yeah.
And
With a little bit of old age makeup.
with a little,
It just looks like putty, but
it looks like putty.
but you get it.
Yeah,
it's fine.
You can tell that they've aged a little bit.
Yeah, that and the walk and getting punched makeup
Yeah.
is like okay, whatever. Yeah, but
Yeah, it was
the only parts
yeah.
of the movie where you're like, is he turning into a monster? What's happening?
And he comes in. They don't really say anything to each
The
other.
boat is
She's
very
kind of
wealthy.
napping on like this little ottoman thing or whatever.
Yeah.
And she kind of wakes up when he comes in, and he's standing over by the fireplace, and he looks at her, and she says, "I would like a cigarette."
Mm-hmm.
She asks for it very formally. He gets a cigarette, and he lights it for her.
Yeah.
She says something to him. I can't remember what. And he just kind of silently nods.
Yeah.
And then he stands up, and he turns, and as he's walking back toward the door, he looks back at her. She looks at him and kind of smiles, and he starts to cry.
Yeah.
And this is what really rammed home how wonderful he is in this movie.
Yeah.
Because that could have teetered into melodrama real quick, but because of his strength as an actor.
Yeah.
And I'm always fascinated with moments in movies, and I like to explore myself because it makes me nervous anytime I do a scene with an actor where I'm like, if we don't do this right, it's not going to work, and it's going to be really cheesy.
Right.
But if you do it authentically and real, it's going to crush.
Yeah.
And he has this moment where he's looking at his wife, and he starts to, his chin starts to tremble, and he looks away from her, and you can see the tears in his eyes. And then he opens the door, and he leaves, and he closes the door behind him, and that's how the movie ends.
Yeah, he just walks out onto the boat.
And he walks out into the front of the boat, and the movie just fades to black.
And you just get the thing, and he's like, he
went
went back to his patrician life and just is haunted by his memories.
So let's unpack that, because I was like, that's a lot.
It is.
And it's beautiful, and I'm so happy that they decided to do that, because you didn't have to end that movie that way.
Yeah.
But I was really happy that he did. Because
Yeah.
his character is based off a historical character who ended up dying and getting hung.
With his wife, who was out.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
I know.
So you could have gone that route, and you would have had your tragic ending, but this hit me way harder, and I felt like was a much more interesting way of ending it.
Yeah.
Because, so what was your takeaway from that ending?
Well, just that, and just that. Well, so first of all, real quick, when I read that he and Ella were man and wife, first of all, that's how impactful and how invested and how much this movie affected me. I read that and I kind of like teared up a little bit, because like they were real and they actually were married, and I was like, that's amazing. I love those people. I want them to be happy. They were hung, or lynched, it said. So same thing, but yeah, in this version of the story, Ella gets really, shot to shit, and so does and Jeff Bridges does too, and then he gets whatever, and then it's just like it's all over, and there's nothing there for him anymore. I mean, the whole town stood up for what, but they all got not even decimated. They were all mated, like they're gone. They
were all obliterated, and then they were still kind of winning at the end.
And you're like, okay,
and then
well,
Sam
Ella
Waterston had ran off to get help, and then he comes back with the cavalry and the military, and he essentially rescues the remaining people
by going like, we're going to arrest these men because it's not okay what they've done to you.
Yeah.
And Chris Christopherson looks at him, he goes like, you're rescuing them is what you're doing. And he's like, again, man, it's not me, it's the rules. And you're just like, thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
It's the rules.
And that actor is an actor who's been seen. I can't remember his name, but he played Howard Hughes in The Rocketeer. It's just I
was like, who is that? And I was like,
exactly.
It's John Locke from Locke.
Yes, that's exactly who it is. Wow, yeah.
But I always do Rocketeer too.
Yeah, nice. That's awesome. And he goes, that's why this works. That's why this works. What is that fucker? Yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby.
Just a second of Rocketeer love, which has to happen every
I like
every
that
episode.
both of our, because I have that figure too. Mine's split in half. I don't know how it happened.
Really?
And I just I teeter them against a book, and I just put in there. I wish I should just glue them, but I don't.
There's his hand over by the Xbox controller. But you're right. You kind of like, you're like, everything is screwed. The Barons are going to get what they want, because they do. They will. This was they lost some people, but whatever.
They were like, even because a lot of people in town didn't want to fight, because they were like, if they don't, even if we do it now in 18 years or in 20 years, they're gonna get it eventually.
Because the mayor, like, they come to him and they're like, we want to turn it. A lot of idiots want to fight, but we want, like, the mayor's there, and he's like, we just turn in.
It's your job as the sheriff.
Turn in the 125 people to get killed.
And
the mayor, and it's
the mayor, and the mayor's like, he's like, if they don't get it now, if we fight now and we win, they're still gonna get it 20 years from now.
And he's like,
and Chris Christopherson just looking at him, and he just goes, what does he say?
He's like, what about today? What about right now?
It's another badass line. He's like, what about today?
And then the mayor, like, almost without skipping a beat, goes, you misjudge us.
Yeah.
We're not strong. We're not. I
Yeah.
mean, he doesn't say that, but that's what he means. He's like, we have to kowtow to these. You know,
Yeah.
we're not cowards, but we're like.
God, unpacking this movie makes me appreciate it so much, even more so.
I
than
know,
I
and
did.
he's just like, it's just such a devastating line that he says almost without shame. He's just
Yeah.
like, we're not heroes. We
Yeah.
we have to do this, and it's in its own way, it's
Oh, you completely understand.
it's
it.
survival.
Yeah.
I mean, in its own way, it's like his is the right thing to do. Sort of. He's going to turn in 125 people so that they, you know, and then just live under the boot heel
Yeah.
of these. I mean, whatever.
And it's like even because Chris Christopherson, he like Ella races off and everybody races off to go fight in the final battle. And Chris Christopherson stays back in town, like very slowly getting ready and stuff. And he gets very neatly dressed, and he puts on his gloves, and he gets his rifle, and he walks slowly.
And
out.
they're leaving town because it's the three of them, and you're like, well, at least like Walken's dead, but it's Bridges, it's Ella, and it's Christopherson, and those are the three people that are left to care about, and they're kind of the heart of the film in a way. And
but I loved when he got on his horse and he walks out. He goes out on his horse out of the stable, like where he was staying, and he's in like the Main Street road, and
Yeah.
he looks back at the mayor with his wife and child, and they're both crying.
Oh,
'cause
you're talking
He
about-
ended up getting shot by one of the immigrants for trying to
yeah,
and but he looks at him, and for a minute, because you know which direction, based off seeing everybody else go,
Yeah.
you know where the battle's at
Yeah.
is to the right, and they're in this wide shot, and he turns and he almost goes left for a second,
yeah.
but they play it perfectly because it's not a fake out, but he's kind of leaning left like he's gonna leave and just leave them all behind.
Yeah.
And then he just does this. He's just, because he's Chris Christopher, he's such a badass man's man. He just kind of goes like this, and he's kind of looking at the mayor, and he's just looking at the mayor, and then he just does a hard right,
Yeah.
and he goes right into the battle.
Yeah,
And
it's
you're like,
amazing.
ah!
It's great.
Ah!
Yeah, absolutely. And you're like,
what I
yeah,
did.
yeah, and it's but you're right. And then so anyway, unpacking the ending, like right. So the battle happens. It's amazing. It just happens for a long time, and some terrible.
And
crap
apparently in the
happens.
5.5 hour cut, that battle is an hour and a half.
Yeah. So yeah, it was like the length of an actual movie.
The head of UA at the time, because they were all banking, they were like, look, we've done 2 years of brutal hardship, like trying to get this done. We're way over budget, but if he can just turn it into a masterpiece,
Yeah.
then we'll be okay and it'll all be worth it. And he said that when he saw that 5.5 hour cut, he was like, because I saw the documentary,
Yeah.
and he seems like a really nice guy.
Yeah.
And he was like, I was mad. I was mad. I'm not gonna lie. I was banking for 2 years that we would walk out of this screening knowing that it was all worth it, and I walked out of that screening knowing that it wasn't.
Now Diz, yeah. Now Diz, know that it's 3 hours and 36 minutes. It is not a short movie at all.
And it's not a fast movie.
And it's not a fast movie. You got to take your time with it. But if you just let it, if you just treat it like it's a novel and just let it give you every little bit of these, Calcifox, thank you for the host. Every little bit of these moments in humanity. Speaking of that, like,
By the way, did you watch this with subtitles on?
I did.
Me too.
Yeah.
Watch
Which
it
is
with
great
subtitles,
because the
'cause
lines are great and you miss a lot.
Beautifully written. The sound, and this is guilty of a lot of,
70s
particularly 70s westerns.
Yeah, true.
McCabe and Mrs.
'Cause-
Miller immediately comes to mind.
Yeah. It's hard to get sound out there.
There is a, I was missing a lot
Yeah.
until I turned, like so much so that I started over.
Yeah.
Because 20 minutes in, I was like, I'm confused.
Yeah.
Then I turned the subtitles on, rewatched the first 20. I was like, oh, I know exactly where I'm at. I know what's going on.
And there are beautiful lines that are literally inaudible.
Yeah.
Like literally inaudible.
But
like
it's-
not,
it's-
what do they say? Like you don't know there's a line there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a beautifully written movie.
Yeah. How do they give it a proper old-fashioned Hollywood intermission? They don't. But they did in the screenings.
They in the screenings when they first premiered it, they had
Acer Blitz.
intermissions, but they removed it in the cut that you'll probably be able to find to watch.
And I'm telling you, it's one of the slowest of slow burns, but there's stuff in there to keep you going. And if you go in there connecting with the humanity of it and then ready for some badass stuff every once in a while, just a tiny handful of it. But yeah, oh my, it is such a payoff. It's worth it so much to me. It's a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite movies. It's one of my favorite movies.
That's so cool, man.
I love it. Yeah. And
Just
it's,
for me too, I was like really taken aback by it.
I know.
And I love discovering, because I've owned this movie.
Yeah.
Because I bought the Criterion.
Yeah.
I bought it a year ago, but I knew how long it was, and in my head I thought it was 4 hours.
yeah.
And for whatever reason, I was just like, wow, that's gonna be.
It's only 3:36. It's a breezy 3:36.
But like, now that I've watched it, I'm gonna watch it again. I'm gonna watch it a lot. I feel like, because it really there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
Because there is so much there. And now that I've really researched it now, and I now see through all the urban legends and all the controversy and everything, and I'm like, yes, he spent way too much money.
Yeah.
I think it was born out of not any ignorance or anything, but true artistic obsession.
Yeah.
And in that sense, it is absolutely fascinating. Should he have done it that way? No. But we got this, and it's fascinating to watch.
I don't
on its
even.
own,
Yeah.
Aside from all that, as a movie, it's just wonderful.
It's beautiful. It's amazing. And it's things like that. So for instance, they're all, they've got a head full of steam. Brad Dourif has just given him this impassioned speech about how
He's such a great actor.
he is, and it's just all about how and he says this because the mayor is like, we need to whatever, and Brad Dourif is like, no, this is I might have written it down where he says something about this is just them saying that poor people's lives don't matter, that poor people get no say in how their lives are run in this country. And it's just, and everyone's like, yeah. And it's like Les Miserables. It's like this, it's that sort of feeling. And it's dun 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 dun. Anyway, and they just get this, they all rush out, and they've all, like, why women and not children, but women or children are there, but kind of the women and children have guns and men have guns, and they all get on their carts. By the way, some of the cart stunts in this movie, I was like, oh my gosh, people fall off horses, horses fall down, and someone is pitched off. That dude,
so
that train guy was amazing. I love that guy, that Dan. I don't even know his name, but I've seen him in other stuff.
But when he fell off his horse, I was like, that looked like he really fell off his horse. Yeah. And, there were reports of animal abuse on set. Like, horses died during filming. Yeah. And, there's no excuse for that either. That's another thing, because, people were boycotting it at the premiere. Yeah. You can see it in some of the photography from the premiere. You can see Cimino with his producer, and in the background you can see picketers with signs. Yeah. Like early PETA people.
I agree. Yes, absolutely. Diz. Into the Wild, yeah, totally. That has, kind of. I actually haven't seen all of it, but it's like a similar pace kind of. I haven't seen all of it, but it is.
Into the Wild, I was like, cool, Sean Penn, you can hang it up, man, because at least as a director, I thought that was a masterpiece. Yeah. I really did. Yeah. It was gut wrenching.
It is, yeah. But okay, so anyway, and you're like, animal abuse, man, it's crazy, because that's one of the first things, they
blew up a horse.
Oh gosh.
Apparently that shot, I was looking for it. They were like, apparently accidentally, because when they accidentally in the battle, they're throwing dynamite and stuff. Apparently a horse accidentally got in the line of fire and got exploderized.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
Oh my gosh.
And apparently that shot is in the movie.
Well, I mean, hey.
Got it?
Well, it's almost like more of it. I don't know. No. I don't know.
No.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Two things. One, we talked about how the change of worlds, right, is part of why that prologue exists in the way it does, and kind of goes on for the while it does. And boy, they go from that rarefied air, that Harvard kind of, everything, starched shirts, everyone dressed to the nine, blah blah blah, but beautiful waltzing on that. There's a cart that comes around, and the camera work that just comes around and then reveals this tons of waltzing people. It's amazing, and it's just visually like that. It's just high society, and then cuts to what ends up being the introduction of Christopher Walken. But it's these immigrants, these very poor immigrants, and he walks under a tent, and there's this. It ends up. I was like, not a horse, but it's a steer, and it's cut open. Yeah. And it goes from Harvard, and just as Ivy League as you, and then they're just he's trying to messing with the guts of the horse and kind of getting it all of the steer and trying to whatever, and then Walken walks up, blows the dude away, and then just walks away in this shot. Gosh darn it, let me show you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's one of the most famous shots of the movie.
Rightfully so.
It's one of the coolest ways to intro a character.
He's in the shadow. He's in silhouette, and the guy's like, "Who is it? Who are you?"
Callback.
Jack, yeah, shoots him through the sheet that's hanging, and like a laundry sheet or maybe to obscure the fact that they killed a steer, stole and killed a steer, and then he walks away in that hole, and it's amazing. And then his wife runs out and he's like, "Huh, no," and she's trying to stuff his innards back into his stomach. And 30 seconds ago, we were at this at this Harvard graduation. I mean, it is effective, and it is amazing, and it's an incredible way to introduce Christopher Walken. But there are these moments like that, and then when they're going off to the war, right, and like all these I mean, essentially peasants, right, like they're like, we're gonna go fight, and they're going across this bridge, and one of the carts loses its footing and just like tumbles off, and there are people on it, and it just falls on top of them.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the follow. Oh my gosh, sorry, who was that? I can't see. Mr. Powers Belt, thank you for the follow. So this cart. And in the moment that it happens, you go, yeah, right, because like in war, there are just a million ways to die, including normal ways that you could die. Like it's basically a
Brad
car
Dourif's
accident.
Wife, and it was him and his wife who fall off.
Is it?
And his wife gets killed, and he's the one who made the big speech and rallied them up to all go and charge and go find him and everything.
Yeah.
And then he and his wife's like hugging him as he's making the speech. And then as they're all racing over to go fight these people, their cart ends up flying off this bridge, and she gets smashed under the weight of it and dies. And he's left to mourn her as everybody else is fighting. Yeah. And I was like, that's such a beautifully tragic way of showcasing how, sometimes you don't get to die in the big battle with your heart on your sleeve. Sometimes you're on the way to the battle, and that's just what happens.
And what happens is it falls off, and you go in a normal movie, you would see that. You would maybe see that and go, oh, you get to go like, right, like it just tumbled off on the way to the battle. They didn't even die in battle. But then then the husband runs down and tries to he's trying to pry his wife under, and then people keep going, and it kind of cuts back, and they're prying over, and you're like, wow, they're really showing us that. And then later, the battle is raging on. Chris Christopherson does the thing where he's coming out of the stable, looks at the mayor, then he's like, I'm off to join the battle. He gallops across that bridge, and we're there, and it's just this beautiful, like it's the husband cradling his wife and sobbing, and it's just such a striking. Because we see war movies and we see movies about violence, but it's just like the war's happening over there, and this man his life is forever changed because his wife is now dead on the way to the battle, not even there. And it's just such a beautiful moment that I wish was in more films about war or whatever. But it just drives home just the personal cost of war. Everyone who dies has oh, thank you, I like it too, Blitz. Has a network of people that are affected by that death. Yeah. I mean, that's just true of anyone, right?
Yeah.
And he's sitting there, and then it's just this doubly effective moment in the sense that it's that, and I'm going, oh my gosh, and I'm forced to think of it on a personal level. Like we've just been seeing a bunch of badass action, but it's like, look, this is what it is. It's like if you watch John Wick, and then they spent 15 minutes with a widow of a person he killed. But it's
right.
And he's just sitting there with his wife sobbing, and then he looks up and you hear as Chris. They don't even show him, but you hear the galloping across.
Yeah, and that's what's cool about that.
And it's amazing, and it just goes, because that's the world. The geography of that town, and I get lost constantly, and I know the geography of that town well enough that I'm like, he's on the way to battle, and it just ties into the integrity of the world and the world building and the placement, and also, and it's just one of the most affecting and effective things I've seen in cinema. And it's a small thing, but it's also a profound thing, but also mechanically within the film, it just goes, like this is all
Sometimes for all this stuff and all these hardships and all these,
Yeah.
it's us versus them and them versus us, and you know, we got a patriotism and our duty and all this stuff, and we're gonna do all these things, and I have all these feelings inside of me and stuff like that, and then my wheel hit a rock and I fell off and now my wife's dead.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
Yeah.
And that's your life now.
Yeah.
And it's so out of nowhere because it just hits a rock, and because you know wagons are what they are back then, it hit a rock and they were going hard. Everybody was like really eager. They were racing.
The stunts in this movie, again, just the
The
driving.
stunts are crazy.
The driving of these carriages.
There is no
I'm
way.
like, no one knows how to drive a carriage, and then stunt drivers in Hollywood don't know how to, so they had to learn.
And apparently they were having extras do a lot of this stuff. So rightfully, like Jeff Bridges talked about it. He was like, yeah, we would during the battle, because again, everybody's just circling around and around and around. He would we would just start. We would all get up to as fast as our horses could go, including Jeff Bridges.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a stunt double.
Yeah.
And then they would do it for 4 minutes at a time. And then they would stop again. He was like, but for 4 minutes, he's like, when you're in a real battle, it's dangerous, but you only do it once.
Yeah.
Because then you're done.
Yeah.
He's like, we did this over and over and over for a month.
Yeah.
He's like, I am shocked that more things didn't happen.
Yeah.
Because even he was like, it was exhilarating, but also I was very nervous for not only myself, but for everyone involved, because some of it like was very dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, this is like at the end of the 70s. This is an interesting factoid. The no animals were harmed in the making of this movie. It's because of Heaven's Gate.
Really?
Yeah.
There are a couple of things that are because of Heaven's Gate. There was a channel, one of the first pay cable channels, Z Channel, that I was not aware even existed.
Yeah.
And there's a documentary about it by John Cassavetes' daughter.
Oh, really?
That I really want to watch, because now I'm like, what? Because apparently it was one of the first pay channels, and it was like dedicated to indie cinema. And so you know what I'm going to say then is that they were one of the they very, very early on, or when they came out, I guess one of the first things they did, or at some point they aired sort of Cimino's kind of director's cut, the 336 version of Heaven's Gate. And they called it the director's cut, and that was kind of the first time. That was sort of the inception of the idea of the director's cut. So it's because of Heaven's Gate.
Everybody
because
thinks it's Blade Runner, but it's not. It was Heaven's Gate.
Blade Runner just has like a very famous director's cut.
Sure.
But it's interesting because it's like Heaven's Gate, which is beautiful and amazing, and I love him. I love the movie, and it's one of my favorite movies now. But it's interesting that because Heaven's Gate was so Heaven's Gate or whatever, it necessitated the creation of the director's cut, but now it's a thing that we have.
This is a wonderful piece of art, but they fucked up on the animals. They really did.
Oh, absolutely.
Like
oh, absolutely.
It's not rumor. Like they hurt some horses.
Pork chopper. Yeah. Description. Thank you. Pork chopper. Thank you so much for those 10 months of unbelievable support, my friend.
And I also want to say, though, that when you watch the movie and you see the final battle, I don't think any of it was intentional, obviously. But I also am shocked that there weren't an incredible amount of stuff. And that thing, and the way they filmed it.
Yeah, it's insane.
Like,
cameramen, crew people would have gotten.
Like, it is crazy. It's intense. And Cimino talked about it, how he was like, I had all my coverage. He's like, people made, because another thing about this movie was people were like, he shot how much film?
Yeah.
And he shot 1.4 million feet of film, 220 hours of film. And a lot of people were like, he was trying to outdo Francis Ford Coppola, who had shot 1 million feet for Apocalypse Now.
And he did it.
But that's not true, because he talked about it. He was like, look, I got a lot of flack for that, but when you watch the final battle, you have to understand that we were doing things that required us to use multiple cameras. For sometimes 10 minutes at a time, with like 7 to 8 cameras running. And when you see the film, you understand. Because it's crazy intense, and like logistically, I can't even fathom how they did that.
So much of this movie, I was like, how did they get that? Wow.
And he was like, I got all my shots and I had everything. I don't storyboard, but like I had the things I knew I wanted natural coverage of, like normal, good cinematic coverage of. Then also, He came from advertising. He was like, I knew a news guy, documentary filmmaker, who would go into war territories and stuff and do a lot of stuff. So, and he was like, on every movie I did, Deer Hunter, this one, I would bring him on to shoot some of the battle stuff, just to and do it. And I wouldn't even talk to him really. I just leave him to his own devices,
which is amazing
and
for Cimino.
And I just let him do what he wanted to do, how he would cover this normally. And so when we were doing the final battle for Heaven's Gate, I just stuck him in there, and I just let him go.
Yeah.
And he came out. A lot of what we ended up using was a lot of his stuff, which is just like this kind of crazy, shaky thing. And it's intense.
It is, and it's amazing. Absolutely. There's so much, man. There's so much going on in this movie that I'm surprised people weren't like more stuff was. There's a part where a horse gets off a ramp and like slips,
I know.
and I'm like,
I know.
Was that? I almost am like, did they make it do that? Like it like
no, but
certainly not. But like
also, I guarantee you, that this stuff happens on Game of Thrones.
Oh, of course,
on the regular.
Oh, of course,
because it's a horse.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, man. Yeah, and it's weird. This is totally out of nowhere. But when he leaves, Isabella Huppert and gets the horse and like just back kind of pulls it out of the thing. I was like, oh man, sucks to be a horse. You just hang around. And then a human's like, let's go.
Yeah.
And you're like, God, time to do my job again.
Right.
And then he's like, oh, come on, let's go. And you're just like, sorry. But it's like,
Stop hitting my arm. Yeah.
Like, I'm not a horse. Leave me alone. Pork chop, I think of those 10 months. But another thing, like, this is interesting. Like, there were just, I mean, trivia for this, it just abounds
it's crazy,
for this movie.
Also,
like John Hurt.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. No.
I was just going to say, I wanted to address it. Isabella Huppert is naked for like the first 20 minutes she's on screen.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I was like, oh, they open with her naked.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's cool. Like setting up, I get it.
Yeah.
And then like the next scene, they cut away to some other stuff. And they come back and the
like,
next scene, she's undressing in a river, and I'm like, oh, she's naked again.
Am I back on camera? Yeah. Okay. And they go, oh, they got a French actress, so she's used to it. No, yeah.
And then now that I've seen all of it, I'm like, oh, well, she's
absolutely.
She's a madame. She runs a brothel, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that actually works. That works for her character.
It really does.
She's a French actress where nudity is not a thing for them. It's not considered like it's not an empowering thing. It's not a degrading thing. It's not a thing for them.
Yeah. But I also think it feeds into the character in the sense that she is this sort of free spirit who doesn't care about things.
It didn't feel,
and that's why
it didn't feel that like it didn't feel
exploitative or anything. Yeah. And that's why I like it's her spirit that they're drawn to.
Yeah.
And her spirit's naked, so that's cool.
It's got a naked spirit.
No, but seriously, I don't like none of this feels out of place or unmotivated, any of it. But yeah, so one thing is that apparently John Hurt had so much had so much time off on this movie because he's just at the beginning and the end and stuff. Well, not just in the beginning, but he pops up. He went off and shot the Elephant Man in 1980 with David Lynch.
And then came back.
Yeah, and then
shot
more.
Anything.
Yeah. And then the other thing is that they had so much time off that Jeff Bridges and Chris Christopherson got to just jamming.
That's where they started jamming together.
Yeah, and then they kind of did music. They did music later together, and then just these jam sessions came out of that, and they're musical collaborators after that, and then Chris Christopherson and Jeff Bridges were both in Crazy Heart. Which is based on the life of one of the guys who's in the band in the
Oh really?
Yeah, this guy named
wow.
John Buttrin, not Burton, John Buttrin, I think. And he's one of the and the guy doing the fiddle is the guy who is the composer. Yeah. And that guy is amazing. Yeah. He's a kid. And I was like, who's this this guy would be played by Paul Dano if you
well, you know who he looked like? He looked like who's the guy who directed Whiplash?
Damien Chazelle.
He looks exactly like Damien Chazelle.
That's really funny.
Exactly.
Really funny.
I was like, that's Damien Chazelle.
Yeah.
On roller skates.
Which I wouldn't surprise me.
It's a wonderful movie.
It's a beautiful. It's a masterpiece. It is a masterpiece. If next time anyone asks me what's a masterpiece of a film, it's gonna be one. It's gonna be on the tip of my tongue. I think it's amazing. It's like like movies like Dances with Wolves and Lawrence of Arabia and Reds are revered, rightfully so.
Yeah.
Heaven's Gate, right there with them. Should be right. Like I would, man.
It's a tragedy.
It's
a real tragedy that it got the rep that it ended up getting. And it's only because financially it didn't do well. That's it.
Yeah.
If it had made its money back the way Titanic did, because Titanic literally did the exact same thing that this movie did. It went way over budget, way over schedule, like massive delays.
It's very comparable in terms of like art direction and scope and size. And
everything about it. Obsessive director, like everything about it. It was like Titanic was going to tank the studio. Like they were very concerned, but it ended up becoming the most profitable film of all time.
And this one had every right to be, I would say. I mean, I don't know. But for whatever reason, public perception or whatever, I mean, all of it ended up happening the way it happened. And this glorious period of director freedom patronized by these studios who just wanted to make film that was relevant but didn't know how because they were old white dudes. Not that, I mean, it's okay to be an old white dude, but whatever. This new Hollywood movement that we've been talking about that spawned most of the movies that we've watched and some of the greatest film of all time hit a couple bumps, and it was a combination of stuff like this of Apocalypse Now, Heaven's Gate, and as we said, One from the Heart, and also as we said, the movies we're gonna consider next, Jaws and Star Wars, which gave the studios another blueprint, and they were like, that
is what we want to be doing.
That I know how to do, because it was like these movies were these new Hollywood movies were profitable and critically acclaimed. Jaws was both to a ridiculous degree, and then Star Wars came along.
And it also was more Jaws. If every movie could be like Jaws, I would be behind this model all the time.
Yeah.
It's just that they took that model and they were like, oh, so we just need to make crowd-pleasing stuff. As opposed
high concept film.
The high concept film. Killer shark that terrorizes a coastal town.
The high concept film is so, like, really honestly, it's like Heaven's Gate's a good one to, I mean, you can kind of, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens in Heaven's Gate.
Heaven's Gate's not high concept.
It's not. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you go, man helps people fight back, immigrants fight back against government, whatever. That gives you that's better than some. Like, you got to get a sense of what, but you do not get the pitch.
Yeah.
And that's it's high. That is not. It's a good plot, but Heaven's Gate is sold on art direction, feel, tone, characterization, humanity, all that stuff. Jaws, giant shark, New England town.
Jurassic Park,
4th of
dinosaurs,
July.
run amok.
Now, these movies are also fantastic and also succeed as amazingly and soaringly as they do because of characterization, humanity, all these things. But they have the added bonus of being like, dinosaurs come back to life.
Yeah.
Huge shark. Space Wars.
And in Star Wars case, Space Wars and Space Wars where we can make action figures and toy lines. And then Star Wars even more so. Jaws brought in the blockbuster picture. Star Wars brought in the franchise.
Yeah. And so Jaws was... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And and with the franchise comes marketability and toy lines and all that shit.
Yeah.
And that's what really changed the game.
Yeah, and rightly so, rightfully so. It's a huge thing. It makes sense. Blah, 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 but without, and that is why. So Jaws was 76, Star Wars was 77, Heaven's Gate was 80. So after those, and so was Apocalypse Now was 79. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after those, we kind of did a little out of order, but there were these movies that kind of spiraled out of control, but it was the combination of like these movies going boom, and directors, and studios started to go, oh, that's what we want.
Yeah,
that's what we want, and we kind of see more of a way to emulate that or to kind of take that blueprint and whatever.
Because it's also like, and I would consider Jaws, you know, I mean, Spielberg made what Jaws is, but you can look at that movie and you don't need a director's voice behind it to see it through. Even though, to be fair, Spielberg, that movie wouldn't be what it'd be if it weren't for Spielberg. But the idea and the idea behind that remains true.
Absolutely. Subscription. Thank you for the subscription, and that's what that basically is what we have is what we have now. It's movies. Jaws would not be what it is without Spielberg. Movies now would not be what they are without Spielberg or without Lucas.
And it's both, like with anything in life, it is both a good thing, and there are some and they're not responsible for that.
Nope.
All they can do is make the stuff that they made some of the best stuff known to man in terms of films. But there are good and bad effects to both things. We got those movies. We got a lot of movies in that vein that were wonderful.
Yeah.
But it also changed the business completely, where we don't have artistic director-driven. No one supports a director-driven medium nearly as much anymore. Right. And the most obvious example of that now is the Marvel films, and just that the nature of the franchise film is where we're currently at. So we're kind of still
versus someone like Charlie Kaufman or something.
Yeah, we're really right in the thick of it right now. And I'm hoping that the bubble will burst someday, and it's only going to burst if the money runs out. But you know, when you see people like Edgar Wright walk away from Ant-Man, it makes sense, because Edgar Wright is actually, he's got a voice, and he's got he leaves a stamp on this film. And there's nothing wrong with making a Marvel movie. I enjoy them, but it's popcorn fodder, and a lot of them, they all blend together.
You eat that money
which is kind of the point.
Face.
It's part of a shared universe. That's kind of the intent of it. But it's hard to get a directorial voice out of that, and so for people like, when he walked away from it, I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah. Completely.
Thank you, Zen, for those 9 months. Thank you so much, sister, and thank you for those 20 months. And so yeah, that's kind of where we are. Now you've seen these movies, and it was a combination of stuff like Jaws and Star Wars where they go, wait, we want to start doing that, and then and at the same time, roughly, these movies like Heaven's Gate, where we're kind of spiraling out of control, and they go, we don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah,
we want to do this, and so that is where we're gonna leave you guys. And next week,
Jaws, baby.
Jaws. So if you haven't seen it, now's a great chance. If you have seen it, watch it again, because
I've seen it a million times. I'm gonna watch it again just because I want to watch it.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain. Guys, thank you so much for joining us for Heaven's Gate. I love.
Like, where do you think I got this card? She took
Mary Ellen Moffat.
She took my heart.
I was in Jaws. I love Jaws.
You got any better suggestions?
Great. It's great. It's great. Man.
A lot of poor Richard Dreyfuss impressions coming next week.
And now, yes. And now we will see. The continuing story of the husband from the cuckolded husband from The Graduate, who was married to Mrs. Robinson, who cheated on him with Benjamin Braddock.
Oh, yeah.
And then went off and became the mayor of a small New England town that was
wore a lot of sport coats with anchors on them.
You yell shark.
People yell shark.
You gotta panic on the 4th of July.
4th of July.
Thank you, Tapiokes!
Nachi Brody.
Barracuda people, what? Huh?
That's the best part. You yell shark.
Subscription. Tapiokes, thank you for those 20 months. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. That is going to do it for us tonight.
20 mon. Lobos gasp.
Guys, watch Heaven's Gate if you got 3 hours and 36 minutes to spare and no better way to use it.
It really is truly, it was such a warm, like, it is so cool to discover a new movie that you're like, oh, wow, I haven't seen that stone cold classic.
It's amazing.
And it blew me away. It really
and next time someone starts mentioning the worst movies of all time and brings up Heaven's Gate, as I know happens to you on a bi-weekly basis, go, there are counterpoints to that opinion. 20 minutes, last minute sub hype, rock and roll. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Yep, that's Stone Cold Steve Austin. Guys, let's hop in, and we're gonna grab. Hey, you want to watch some movies? Let's go raid Public Domain Cinema.
Ooh.
Oh boy, King Noodle's best friend. What do we think of furries? Furries. Hey man,
I'm all in.
if you're not hurting yourself or someone else, rock and roll.
Furries are when they dress up and then bang it out, or when they bang. How's it? They dress up in
We'll
furry.
Google. I'll turn this off. We'll Google. Well,
Cool.
I'll send you home. Tell you, you sweet summer child. Welcome to Twitch, guys. We're gonna wait. That's called. Wait. Hold on. Oh, PD Cinema. Sorry. Hold on. Here we go. Raid PD Cinema. Guys, let's go watch a movie. Go watch a movie. Thank you so much. And thank you for the bits. Thank you for the bits that you gave to me. You're a furry. Rock and roll, man. Do it. Guys, thank you so much. Next week, Jaws. Thank you so much to Jeff Ray. Thank you, guys.
See you next week.
And we'll see you next week. Lots of love. Yeah, I love movies. I love them. See you in a bit.